All right, welcome everyone to the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners work session on Tuesday, September 16th. We've had a lovely morning with our Pickens County Cares Awards, and now we are going to start on our staff and community presentations, where we will discuss the permit for the 2026 X Games. I'll turn it over to community development staff. Hi, Samantha.
Hi. So we're here for our annual review of the special event permit for X Games 2026. This is their 25th year at Buttermilk. I'm here with Jeff Hermanek and some representatives from the ski company behind me.
You know what I'm going to say.
Oh yeah,
right?
I'm going to be louder too. Sorry, Francine. X Games this year will be held January 23rd through the 26th. And they're actually changing the dates. Last year it was held Thursday through Saturday, and then this event will move back to Friday through Saturday, or Friday through Sunday, sorry. New this year as well, the day events will be, well, I think it's returning actually to how it was previously, but the day events will be free and the evening events will be ticketed. Last year it was all ticketed. The event has a maximum of 10,000 spectators this year, which is different than their projected 8,000 last year. Motorsports are back. They're going to have snowmobiles as part of the competitions, and that event will utilize Panda Peak. The lift will not run to the public during those times. They will have live music and DJs, and no public parking on site as previous years. And those are pretty much updates from staff, and that's all I have.
Okay, why don't we hear a presentation from SkiCo, and then we will check in with questions from board members. Hi.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Hermanek. I'm the Senior Director of Live Event Operations for the X Games. We are thrilled to be working again with our partners at the Aspen Skiing Company. As Samantha mentioned, this will be the 25th consecutive year of the X Games in Aspen. That is a feat not to be considered lightly, I think. 25 years of success of the community welcoming the event to Buttermilk. The event will be broadcast live on ESPN and ABC for a total of 13 hours for the events this coming winter. And also another thing to highlight, with our spot in the calendar, it will be the last event for many of the Olympians, both U.S. and internationals, that will be competing and training prior to them leaving to go to Italy. So it's a big event for us every 4 years. When it's an Olympic year, we definitely get the best of the best athletes that come to compete, and we're excited to be able to give them the platform to do that. As Samantha mentioned, from a ticketing standpoint, we are changing it a little bit for 2026 as compared to 2025. So hearing some feedback from the community over the last few years, we're changing the scope a little bit in that daytime when the mountain is under normal operating hours, that will be free to the public to attend. So they can go up course side, view any competitions that happen during those daytime windows. We will have music performances in the afternoons that the public will be able to attend as well. And then at 5 p.m. is where our cutoff is based on when mountain operations typically would close, roughly around 4. That gives us enough time to clear the non-ticketed patrons off of the venue and then convert it into a ticketed venue from 5 p.m. until 11 p.m.
That's great news. I like that.
Those are the main highlights.
Okay, questions currently? I'm sorry, can you clarify your role again? Are you the owner of the event that permits with both SkiCo and the county? Or
So I work specifically for the X Games. I'm the Senior Director of Event Operations. So I do a lot of the behind-the-scenes planning, venue layout, work closely with our partners in law enforcement, safety, along with the Aspen Skiing Company management team.
So you're within the ownership group?
I'm a part of the X Games team, not
what-
not on an executive level, not part of the ownership itself.
So who owns the X Games brand now?
The X Games is owned by a division of MSP Sports Capital. That's the parent company. The specific company that I work for is called Sports Content Creation, which operates under the DBA of X Games.
Okay. So who are we giving the permit to?
Sports content creation.
Okay, thank you. Will there still be a locals discounted ticket for the evening events?
There will.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Greg?
Yeah, tell me more about the motorized sports. I, for one, was kind of happy to see them go away.
Sure.
It'd be nice to understand how many of them are, 2-cycle motors or 4-cycle engines, and what nature. Are they? We're fairly concerned about carbon mitigation, things like that. What is X Games doing to mitigate for the pollution they're generating?
Sure. So from an athlete perspective, we don't designate the motor size that they can use. So they can choose between a 250 or a 450, depending upon their athlete, what comfort level they have in the equipment that they perform on. From a sports-specific standpoint, there's only 2 events that will be designated for snowmobiles. Those will be announced on September 30th, when tickets will go on sale to the public. So the entire sports calendar itself, as well as a few of the music performance artists, would be announced on that September 30th date.
What does that have to do with carbon mitigation?
Carbon mitigation, I don't have a good answer for you. We can definitely come back to you with a more defined plan.
Okay, I'd like to see that before I vote for this.
Other questions? Go ahead.
I see Alex. So IMT in the same location, same team, everyone standing up. Any changes from past years? And happy 25th. Very cool. Given we don't have FIS and America's Downhill, it's nice to see you back for year 25. So thank you. And I did have the chance last year to tour the IMT, and really impressed at sort of the collaboration and teamwork and seeing everyone come together. So really appreciate that. And Alex,
Yeah,
anything new for 2025?
Nothing new. We'll just continue to work with Skiko and Jeff and his team to ensure that we have the safest possible event for everyone that's going, both staff and citizens and visitors. But we'll stand the IMT up again, work with our partners, probably federally and regionally throughout the state to ensure that we have good intel to ensure that we do have that safe event for people. So we welcome everybody back out for another tour this year, and I'm sure we'll be working with Abby and her team to set that up.
And then, follow up. Anything new and improved on the transportation side that we've learned? Collaboration with RAFTA, anything new? Since it's a parking-free event, and again, we just experienced Up in the Sky. It was really well done with no on-site parking and really good leveraging of private buses. So anything new you're bringing to the table in terms of 25 with transportation? And it could be a John question, sorry. Yeah.
Cohorts.
No new. You have to come up.
Nothing new and improved.
Nothing new and improved. Basically the same transportation plan we've had in the past, collaborating with RAFTA, as well as bringing in another bus company basically same as Up in the Sky has used in the past. So, but yeah, utilizing Brush Creek Park and Ride, and yeah, that's basically the same as in the past.
So you have everything you need from a staging perspective.
Yep. Feel good about everything right now.
Awesome.
Yep.
Francie.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of walk through what it would be like for a local or a Down Valley person to attend. So they would go and they would use their pass or buy a ticket as on any other ski day, and they would ski down to the venue, or can they walk into the venue?
Anything prior to 4 p.m., if you're local, if you're from out of town, you do not have to purchase a ticket to attend the event.
And is there a distance away from the half pipe, for instance, where they have to stand compared to other people? Is it tiered or anything?
No. So for the daytime events, there's no restriction. If you can walk into, we'll call it course adjacent viewing areas, if there's space open for you, that is your area to be in, as long as you're within that designated time window. Once
Okay.
the free events would end, our security staff would then go through, do a sweep of the venue of non-ticketed patrons, and at 5 p.m. it would turn into a ticketed venue. So
But all the patrons would be non-ticketed at that point, correct?
up until 4 p.m.
Yeah,
correct.
everybody would, so everybody leaves. And then if you want to come back in and buy a ticket, you leave and come back, something like that?
Correct. Or if you had purchased a ticket prior to the day and you had already had your event wristband, you would show that wristband
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what
to
I was
your
wondering.
security personnel. If they're escorting you out and just say, hey, I have my wristband for the evening, you've been through your security checks. At that point, if you are ticketed and have your wristband to be in the night session, you would not be required to leave.
I see.
It's those patrons that are viewing the events for free. If they don't have that wristband that they have paid for an evening session, they would be escorted.
And what
off
is
of
the
mountain.
cost of entrance after 4 o'clock?
So it will vary. The tickets right now for the early bird offerings will be significantly less in 2025. So in 2025, those tickets range between $59 and $69 before tax. This year for that early bird offering, it will start between $29 and $39 before tax.
Early bird meaning you buy it early, not early in the day, but early in the season.
Correct. Early in the ticket offering. So when those tickets first go on sale on September 30th, there's a certain allotment
I see.
that will qualify for that lower price ticket. That lower price ticket is also applicable to a local Roaring Fork Valley resident. So that ticketing is based upon how they purchase with that credit card. What that credit card address is registered will determine if they qualify for that discounted ticket. So the incentive of purchasing earlier is that you will get that lower price ticket. The ticketing plan is set up similar to a music festival, similar to an Up in the Sky. If you purchase early, you get the best deal. If you want to wait until later, the price will go up a little bit, but you also run the risk of potentially the event being sold out and not being able to purchase a ticket for the day that you want to come.
And what were your numbers last year? How many attendees did you have last year?
So we were permitted for 8,000.
8,000 total, or 8,000 a day? Or
8,000 per day
Okay,
for the 3 event days, so 8,000 each day. Each one of those days, we were fortunate that we were sold out on each of those days. With the addition of snowmobile events for this year, it expands the overall footprint of the venue that we have. That's why we've requested to increase the capacity for 2026 to 10,000 per event day.
and will the snowmobile events be on the Aspen side of Buttermilk like they used to be? Way over on
Correct.
the edge?
Same location as historically they've been on the Panda Peak area of the resort.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm done.
Other questions? So I just want to be clear, this is we give a 1-year permit for the X Games, based on our input to ComDev staff to issue that permit. So that's what we're doing today. Greg, I'm curious if you want to unpack a little bit more about your expectations.
Well, I'll share, the community has, we get a lot of feedback about impact on the community from big events, tourism. Sometimes too much is too much. And the criticism for X Games comes right in part and parcel with the appreciation that X Games has been here. A lot of people really do like the X Games as well. I think that when an organization has such an impact on the community, then there's a responsibility and an obligation that comes with that to give back and to try to mitigate, whether it's through donations to nonprofits or making sure, contributing and helping people, maybe helping educate people about composting and recycling, all the things ski companies been doing quite well for years. And I think that they would, I'm surprised if they're not demanding that you have some sort of carbon mitigation effort along this. And if it exists, I apologize for not knowing that.
Sure.
So I think that's the important thing. Demonstrate to the community that it's more than just about a profit-making entity running a big show here. I know X Games has run really well. There are a lot of benefits to it. I don't want to discount any of that, but it never hurts to publicly demonstrate we just came from an award ceremony where we had 26 citizens that were called out for their volunteerism and giving of themselves to the community, and our community is famous for that. It's the glue that holds us together, is this sense of volunteerism and philanthropy in the community. I don't think it's too much to ask an organization like yours coming in to pony up and participate, and I can't help but think you'll be appreciated more for it. That's my soapbox. Thank you.
I do have one more question left.
Do you want to respond before I go to Francie?
I can get Rigney up here. Do you want to come up? You could. Since I called you guys out, and I do know that you have the ski company has been a good partner.
Yeah, thank you. So John Rigney, multifaceted comment there. So I'm going to try and break it down into pieces. The composting we do, like that how to compost, like we do that everywhere and at edX. I actually just had an awesome conversation with their community development officer yesterday. And we talked about some of the things that have been most successful through the years when a big event comes to town, like what lands the best. And it was this amalgam. Now, again, there were no promises. This was a conversation, but it was excellent with somebody who's been here a long time. And it was about, like, back in the day, with World Cup, we'll bring the athletes into the schools. That's a huge source of pride as being home of the X Games. Having the tickets free, the first 500 for high school students up and down the valley, that was a big move forward. This idea of embracing nonprofits, or how do you, do we have something like the Environment Foundation, which feeds programs all over the valley, come out and almost do, a dog and pony show with the guests that come through during the day, more practical than the day and then at night. Just this general spirit of, like, we've been here 25 years, we want to be a part of it. I can't speak to like the carbon offsets. Obviously what we do, we believe in, and we think of it as a holistic approach to everything that goes on here. Motors coming back, I think, is going to be exciting, but it's not what we were used to back in the day when it was half the programming was motors. So this is far more dumbed down. So I don't know if that gives a good feel for it, but I think we're aligned on, we're both the broker between the event and the mountain, and the event and the community, and coming in here and being proud to be here and engaging, all demographics and kind of all things that are important to us is important to X.
Well, thanks. If I could just follow up, thank you for that. I appreciate you being here and coming in with that. And just going to say, I would expect Ski Company or Aspen One would demand that of anybody they work with. Just a thought.
The carbon offsets?
Sure. Why not?
Well,
you don't have to answer it now. It's just my comment.
This is unique, but yeah, it's a fair point, and I think we'll take it back offline and kind of figure out how to best
That'd be great. Thank you.
verbally address that in practice and in words.
And you've got the busing stuff all figured out. It seems like it works pretty well considering the volume of people that flow through.
It does. We were undersubscribed last year, so we do think that the amount of transit, and we beef up our skier shuttle routes. They become even more important during X, and they bear the load during the day as well. So we feel good about that. Obviously, you blow transit, you blow the whole thing. So we're not going to fail there.
If you guys were to show off electric transportation at that event, you'd get a big audience for it. Just a thought. Just a thought.
Well, we can talk to Raft about that. Obviously, that's a big part of their fleet.
We could go on all afternoon, and I could keep coming up with things. But I think that's great, and I do appreciate it, and thank you all for listening.
Okay, Francie.
Well, I'm glad you came up to the table, because I was curious about what is the role of the SkiCo. It's a little confusing now. It used to be like ESPN and SkiCo, and now there's these many other names of businesses. It's kind of confusing.
So, great point, and definitely a point of confusion, especially in the last, call it 3.5 years. X Games was a division of ESPN, which was a division of the Disney company. The X Games entity essentially got purchased largely by this other entity, this mothership of what Jeff's referencing, which is MSP Capital. They have a bunch of properties, et cetera. But the X Games entity and many of the players just moved from being under the ESPN and the Disney umbrella to this new org. Now they've brought in new people, times change, but it's still like X Games as an entity. They just have a different parent company. And then us. I would say our role, I mean, going back to '01, we had more of like the periphery of the support. So it was like, transit, trash, medical. And since then, as our team has evolved and developed, we're doing more in the field of play, sport, execution. Obviously, patrol plays a huge safety role. So it's still a combination, and it just shifts based on what's the makeup of either organization every day. We're taking on more and more every year.
Okay. Is it profitable for the ski co?
No, I mean, like, look, if we basically, everyone that comes to town to support the X Games is coming to work on or participate in an event, and they are accessing our hills, gratis. But what I would say is I do think it's a very strategic investment, not just for us, but really for us, everyone holistically. Like, we are locking down a weekend in January, and we've done this successfully for a long time, which causes, compaction and compression and drives rate and occupancy for the whole month. We're going after any demographic that any ski area in their right mind would go after, which is like a more youth oriented. And I think we're still staying true to our DNA and like celebrating sport kind of at the highest levels. So it's an investment.
It's a marketing investment.
You got it. Global television, worldwide exposure. It's influencing the influencers so that people can come here and tell their story from a first person vantage point. Because, Aspen, not everyone makes it here. It's a bucket list thing. So if an event brings someone here and we blow their doors off with our valley and the Four Mountains, et cetera, then I think it's the gift that keeps giving. And obviously when we put our cards down against any other ski area in the world, we'd like to believe we're a little stickier than anyone else. So this has been
And if it snows when it's on television, it really helps bookings.
We look for 50-50. 50% sunshine, 50% snowfall, HD flakes. It usually works out.
Okay, thank you, John.
I could just make one comment. Sure. Francine, to your point, this is my first time that I've had the privilege of being in front of the BoCC. There's been previous employers in our company that are no longer with us that have done the presentations. This upcoming 2026 event will be my 15th X Games.
Oh.
I live and breathe this event, this sport, the relationship that we have with John's team, with Alex's team at the IMT. This is not an event that we take lightly. It is an event that we plan on a year-round basis. So just when the event ends at the end of January, we don't start talking about it in September. We're having internal meetings. We're having side discussions. We've met with Gabe several times since July. I had the opportunity to come out to experience Up in the Sky as well. So just helping support the community in different events. We work closely with the Goldberg family. They help book all of our music talent. So to say that it's a homegrown event may be a little bit of an inaccurate description, but there are many that work within our X Games organization that have been either employed with ESPN or involved in this event for honestly a better part of their life. I mean, with this event being the 25th year coming into us, like I said, we don't take this lightly. We know that we are on display, that we're analyzed. We always want to put our best foot forward because it's our reputation on the line, as well as John's team with the Ski Co., with the city of Aspen, with Picken County. So we like to look at every event that we do. We'd like to leave it better than how we came into it. So Greg, to your points about carbon mitigation, we'll absolutely come back to you with some ideas and suggestions on how to do those offsets. It's an important thing. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're respecting this community and this the county and the city so that we can be here for 30 years, 35 years. We don't, my opinion, this is one of the best events that the X Games has done. And I think returning for 25 consecutive years is an example of that. So we very much
Welcome.
appreciate your time.
To our table.
Thank you.
It's okay to smile when you're at our table.
Sure.
We like that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Are you good?
I'm good.
Questions? Okay. I have a question for staff. Do we do a debrief that becomes part of the permit file?
We take in comments that come out after for like the X Games. We don't have like a meeting and debrief that I know of that we have done with the X Games in quite a while.
We do. The IMT does. In public safety, we get together and do an after-action review. But I'm not sure if that gets distributed to you for submission to any file or anything like that.
Okay. I'm just wondering, there's no mechanism here to sort of hold the statements accountable relative to a carbon, some addressing of carbon offsets. I guess I'm looking for some suggestions on how that might, a year becomes a long time to then sit here for a 2027 permit and try and remember what we did in 2026. So I'm just wondering how we might create a feedback loop to answer the concern that Greg has raised and let it be part of our body of knowledge relative to approving this.
I mean, I guess my
event.
only thought is if there's something you want, it's not for this year's event. If you're talking about for next year's event, we can put it as a condition in the permit, again, and but then it's right. We can sort of, through our own systems, create that in our system as a reminder, like, okay, next year when the permit comes in, this is an expectation that that's included. So we can do that kind of on the back of house end of things. To flag it basically in SAGES when the permit comes in. But I think understanding, sort of what it is you all are looking for, obviously more direction for them to be planning ahead for that. The more we can get sort of direction on that, the better. But we can flag it in various ways.
Looking to you for any suggestions. I guess I would also say, separate from like this permit, this application, I am wondering if we should be spending some time thinking through how, what the carbon impact is of our approval of these big events as part of our own Pickens County climate planning. The same way that we look at, our organization comprehensively. Is this something we should start looking at more comprehensively? Now that we have like multiple big events that we're approving, we sit in this seat and have to sort of take some accountability for what's being generated from that, which I don't think is something to resolve currently at this moment at this table, but I will
question.
just, flag that. So I don't know, I guess I need a little bit of help on like how would we frame this in the context of this permit? Like, what would we just say? We have some expectation of some report out of efforts on a carbon offset or carbon mitigation. Like, I'm not quite sure how to close the loop here.
Well,
Jeffrey?
we used to get, go ahead, Jeffrey. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you had your hand up.
He
It's
did.
hard to tell.
I mean, it seems like I don't want to say an easy path forward would be, right now the collaboration between the county and the other departments is really around the health safety. That's really been the nexus, I think, of the approval process. In terms of community impact, in terms of environment, I mean, the go-to is the ski company annual report, right? There is a nexus with the overall activities of the resort and the impact on the community. And I can't think that we'd show up at a table and say, well, we need one more thing, but that's what you're already producing, right? So the Aspen Ski Company already produces an annual report. We all read it. And that, to me, puts the spotlight on the activities, including the special events. If there's something additional in 2026, then, that's fine. But I think in terms of a 25 permitting, that's my go-to right now in terms of looking at local companies and how they do business in the valley.
Thanks for that. I was just going to say, when our departments report to us, especially after we declared a climate emergency and created a climate action plan, every department would report on what their climate action plan is and how they're doing with it. We're looking at 2030 net zero goals coming up on us very quickly, where we're trying to electrify, we're trying to get to net zero. You know, we all have that goal, your company as well. This, I think, must be part of that if we're going to get anywhere near, if we're trying to fall as little short of those goals as we're going to fall. Everybody has to be part of it. And so I certainly would love to see a climate action plan, report or statement after events like this, because they do have an impact, there's no question. So let's figure out what it is, how we can mitigate it, how we can move toward our goals. And I appreciate Kelly and Jeffrey's comments. And whether you can, I think you can do it before or after this event is finished this year, no question. It's not that heavy, not that big a lift. But I'd love to see it included. Why not? What's the downside?
Yeah, for sure. And again, like, we're going back to a time that we haven't been in at least, I want to say, 7 years. So, but one thing to keep in mind, which X is to be commended with, is like a lot of what we've done through the years. Now, I'd be a whisker outside of my comfort zone citing facts and figures in the climate realm. But I do know that we partnered with these athletes that participate in X and others to really build the foundation of POW.
Sure.
And Protect Our Winners is all about advocacy and pulling big levers, at local, state, and federal levels. And the athletes that are part of X are a huge resource on this. So even broaching this topic with them, I think, is in and of itself a good step. But we have some of the loudest, most impactful voices. And again, to Jeff's point, in an Olympic year, like, the world's going to shine a light on skiing and snowboarding. And guess where all their footage is going to come from? From right here.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
right before they are here, the Grand Prix is here, Snow League comes later in the year. Like, so these athletes are a huge lever to accomplish much of what you're alluding to here. Big picture, macro
Right.
thinking.
That's great. Well, maybe you can include some stuff in the background while they're competing here that will help. Just a thought. Thank you. That's good. I know you guys will do something amazing. So looking forward to it.
I'm feeling unresolved. Are we directing staff to bring back
It's just informational, isn't it? For
some info for future year permits relative to this topic?
a suggestion on how to incorporate climate action plans into the application process and the informational sessions from staff. Throw it to you.
I mean, if we want to, I think we're talking about code amendments at the point you really want to add that as, there's a much bigger discussion, I think, about, right, is this just large events? Is it every event? Is it everything else that goes on in our community? I think there's a big conversation there. So I think for now, if you want to start here and ask these guys as part of their event this year to kind of report out, but you're like, here are all the things, we're doing, which kind of starts to give you a baseline of, what that conversation is. Maybe then that, helps us lead into, next year or, right, thinking about what does that look like. But I guess, right, to the point of Vision 2050, and we're looking forward to probably someday doing a lot of code amendments with you on a lot of different topics out of our land use code. Special events is one piece of that.
Right.
That we're, right, we can certainly flag. But I think seeing it as, right, here's an opportunity to, right, at least get something after this event to go, right, here are all the things that we do have going on in this realm. And, right, whatever, we can bring
That's a
that
great
back to you.
suggestion.
And, right, and then, I guess, right, see where that leads us going forward.
Right.
But at least, right, it's starting to kind of go, like, talk to us, tell us what it is. Show us what you have going on, and then that, I think, will help guide.
Yeah, there's the risk of some grand irony with the X Games event, being a snow showcase at a time where snow is diminishing from climate change, that we should really be overcoming any criticism about a large event contributing to the thing that's going to lead to its demise. Is a little bit of what I would like to see from this event and hear reported out from in the future. I think it's a very fair question that Greg has raised relative to planning how this is all going to get executed this January. And I don't think we've had sufficient info brought to us now. So I want everyone to be very prepared to answer those questions come the future and hopefully highlight successes from the 25-year anniversary event as well. Francie.
I'm a little uncomfortable with the direction this conversation is going, honestly. I think the SKICO goes over and above in trying to mitigate for emissions and consumption. And I know they've tried over the years to set the standard. Of course, nothing's perfect. Snowmaking is terrible, and skiing is terrible for the environment. But I talking about code amendments and stuff. I'm not there. I'm just saying, I'm not there. I appreciate what the SKICO does environmentally, and I think this is a pretty cool, iconic event. I would never go anymore in my life to this event, but I do watch it on television, and it's a significant event for a lot of young people in this valley, and has been, well, my kids grew up and now my grandkids. So honestly, I kind of think we're overreacting here. That's where I'm at. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Suzanne wasn't talking about doing this today or this
I know.
this week.
I'm just
But
saying.
if we're going to walk the talk on climate, shouldn't everyone else who's involved with this?
And I think this
all my
question has
questions,
been
yeah.
asked every single year we've reviewed this permit at this table,
has it?
so it's not being answered today, which is a little bit of a surprise, given that we've been very clear for many years that to foreshadow that this would come up and that we are committed to our leadership in the climate space. I trust our partnership with SKICO, but these are also very big events. And so I think it's a 100% fair question to ask of someone who comes before us for a permit.
Can I just realized when the thing that sparked our declaration of a climate emergency and a plan and motivated us was the group of school children who came in and demanded it of us. Those are the same kids who are completely enthralled by X Games. So they're your audience and your market. They're the ones whose future's at stake and who should be most concerned. So it seems to me it would be a plus, just to be aware of that. Makes sense to me. But I don't want to belabor it. I feel like we've talked about it, and I'm confident that you guys will, work on that and take it seriously. So I'm ready to move on.
Okay, Jeffrey.
Two comments. I think one's probably repetitive, but I think the health safety, the safety piece, Abby's here, Alex is here, Rosa, Gabe, we are all, there's a team at this table actually, and John and Jeff, and I think again, having worn the hat last year of walking through the IMT, it's an incredible operation and collaboration. And so to me, that's where building code and all the other safety and the other pieces hit in terms of this event. So to me, I'd like to see that relationship going forward, and it's an incredible one. It really was powerful walking through the IMT and understanding that everything that goes into this event. The second piece, in terms of accountability and climate, in 2 weeks we will all be at the top of the sun deck with ACRA, and generally it's Aspen Skiing Company staff and management that's presenting, and usually there's an overall climate nexus in all these conversations. So I don't believe it's one event all of a sudden got to account, but through the annual report, through ACRA, through Protect Our Winners, to me, it's a constant conversation that we are having as a community, much like health safety. We're also having a conversation about, what do we do in terms of climate. So to me, just to say it's this event and there's some new metric that we're going to look at, I think we're looking at the lens is there every event through ACRA, through POW, through the annual report. we have a climate nexus in everything that we're doing. So thank you for letting me drag on.
You know something?
I appreciate what you said.
Pardon me, if I may, that probably gets lost is like we use this snow and then we repurpose it for our own community. So kids are living and training in our snow sometimes until July, so that they're not getting in a car and going to other areas and getting on plane and their carbon footprint, metastasizing, like they're training right in our backyard. And they're running gates and they're hitting the pipe until the pipe basically evaporates on the sunward side. And, it's another way of like maximizing, what we put forth. Fully 1/3 of the free ski half pipe team for the U.S. Olympic team comes from here. That's not an accident.
Remarkable.
That is remarkable.
So again, that's not a climate story, but if you think about how we use what we create and try to make as much good as possible, I think there's some positives in there too.
There's a ton of positives, and sorry if I've come across more negatively than I intend to. Tony, this isn't a public session, sorry. But, I will say it would be great if the 25th anniversary is a way that we can showcase all of our commitments to it. And I think we're prepared to let staff administer the permit. We don't vote today or direct them necessarily on that, but that's where we're headed. Right? John, did you have something else?
I just want to do a quick check-in. Suzanne, do you feel like you've got clear direction then on, it sounds like the board wants a condition on a report out of the environmental efforts to reduce greenhouse gases and those sorts of things at the X Games, and a report out prior to the next permit being considered. Did we capture that
I'd
correctly?
certainly I'd be grateful to have that.
And that'd be good just to make sure the applicant is on board or doesn't have complaints, and then we can do that as a condition.
And again, I think this reflects that we ask this question basically every year as well. Does that work? Okay. Thank you.
Great.
We're excited, despite some of the discussion. It's going to be great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I appreciate it.
All right. Let's move on. We're going to do our budget prep discussion if John and Connie are ready.
She better have a climate report for us.
Well, she needs a minute to get set up.
I know, rescue.
Quickly, if you like.
I forgot to log into the meeting because I was sitting.
Connie, did John share the cartoon I gave him this
I
morning?
didn't mean to, I don't know why I went so negative, but
If it's in his presentation, I've seen it, but no. Okay.
I've realized, how do you get in the good
So you should have
graces
been
of the
anticipating.
county manager? Do you supply him with an ample supply of cartoons that are suitable?
As inserting a cartoon into your slides, Connie. That you saw it. Sorry, it's looking up.
Hi, Connie.
Hi.
John, that's for that.
What's that? I'm just having trouble sharing here. Okay. All right, Kelly, whenever y'all are ready.
I think we're ready.
Okay. All right, thank you for letting me log on and get set up here. So we wanted to do a little pre-session. We have, we've obviously cut the number of work sessions that we're going to be doing with the board. throughout the budget process. And today we don't have decision points to put in front of you. There's a lot of detail. We are continuing, and when I say we, Connie is continuing to work through with the proposed budget, and we're still finalizing recommendations. So the point of today is to really provide framework for the board as far as what are we seeing in terms of what are we projecting for revenues and resources coming into this year's budget. We talked a little bit about fund balance already when you did your third quarter supplementals. We're going to bring back some of that same information and have a little bit of additional context around it for you all just to be thinking about or have in your minds as we're bringing recommendations forward. We've also come to agreement on how we think revenues, local revenues, are going to change and either grow or decrease over this 2026 planning horizon, but also the 5-year plan horizon. We want to share our thinking there and just get an understanding. The board's like, yeah, that makes sense to us, or if there are any real red flags that we should be anticipating. At a very high level, we at the staff level have set priorities for putting together the budget that we're going to recommend to you. And again, these are 30,000 foot priorities, not detailed, but we want to talk to you about how we're prioritizing, what do we see as being first in and next in and last in as far as putting our recommendations together so that you understand how we're thinking about it, and if there are any real concerns while we're going through this process of putting together a recommended budget, we can have that conversation. And there are going to be some key policy questions, and just a spoiler, it's going to have to do with how are we balancing our local needs and priorities with making up for gaps that are being created by what have been long-term partners like the federal government maybe not funding things going forward. And we've got a general strategy for how we want to approach that, but if we're way off base, it really changes potentially how we put our budget recommendations together. So this isn't very specific. It's going to be at a really 30,000 foot level, except for stuff Connie does will be more precise on the revenue projections. But we just want to take this time to share our thinking as we're going through the process and make sure we're generally aligned with the board as we're putting together the proposed budget. And so with that, we will start off with, we're not going to go through all the funds and fund balances. The fund that tends to be the most challenging for us is the general fund as we move forward. So we're really going to spend time today talking about the general fund.
Yeah. So this is part of a chart that the board saw recently when we presented the third quarter supplemental request. So it should look somewhat familiar with what we're planning through the original 2025 budget and supplemental request to spend down this year, our revenue and expenditure projections, and then where we think we'll end up with at 2025. At the end of 2025, we'll have around 15 million in fund balance for unassigned general fund and about 1.3 million in the capital fund. We do transfers from the general fund to the capital fund of surplus just to keep funding the capital fund. So we normally keep that one a bit lower. As we're putting together 2026 budget proposals, we're looking at potentially spending down between general fund and capital fund about $7 million of that fund balance. So it is a pretty significant year coming up. And you will see a fairly sharp decrease in those fund balances with what we will bring forward. just a very quick preview of what we're looking at so far in the capital fund. Our IT network infrastructure, that's the backbone of what makes our whole system work, that I don't understand, but I expect it to work when I'm trying to do my work. They started in 2025 and will continue in 2026 with some replacements of servers and switches and things like that. For fleet, as our vehicles are coming up on their regular replacement schedule, they're replacing more and more vehicles, gas vehicles with electric vehicles. That does increase the cost. They have plans for an upgrade to the Public Works EV charging station and another EV charging station potentially in Basalt. That's in the, will probably be in the proposed capital plan. On the facilities side, there's a chiller in the little data center that's back behind the jail that needs to be replaced. At Basalt River Park Center, there are 3 units on the rooftop. I believe they're both heating and cooling that are very old and end of life. So there's a proposed project for that building. And then also our regular employee deed restricted housing program. So those just some very general highlights of what we're looking at. On the general fund side, our departments prepare 10-year replacement schedules, or some of them do. For example, elections will plan out when they think they'll need to replace voting machines or other equipment. Or in the jail, when they might need to replace furniture or a fridge or other equipment. And 2026 ends up being a year where there's a bit more in replacements. The sheriff and jail are looking at replacing all of their tasers, and then the sheriff's office replacing radios. And those items together are around $500,000, so it's not insignificant. We do plan out for these. We place our projected replacement schedule in that 5-year plan for the general fund so we can be planful. But you do hit years where there's a peak or a drop in those replacements. And 2026 is a bit more of a peak. At the same time, we also have a couple new positions in the general fund that are being added currently for to support the big airport project. And those will a fairly large percentage of those positions will be reimbursed through the county cost allocation plan by the airport. However, the cost allocation plan is always 1 year in arrears. So in 2026, we'll have a full year of those positions, and that reimbursement or the increase in reimbursement won't be seen until the following year in 2027. So just to mention a few of the different factors that will be coming up as items in that budget and why we will see a decrease in fund balance in the proposed 2026 budget.
And the use of fund balance for those, sorry, my computer's not responding here. The use of fund balance to cover those airport positions should be viewed as cash flow. It's not that that fund balance is gone, but it's cash flowed for a difference in the time that a revenue is realized through the cost allocation plan and the expenditure is realized, which is the year before.
Question on that. So if there's a year lag, there's an interest expense, it's cost of the money expense. Is that calculated in somehow? Is there?
It's not.
It's not?
Yeah.
So we just plan on sucking that up.
Yeah, and it's, the cost allocation program, I suppose that's something that we could look at internally, but it's federally defined. I always want to see OMB 87, but that's the old circular.
It's the CFR Part
Thank you.
200 from
Yes,
the
thank you.
Office of Management and Budget Super Circular or
Yeah,
something like that.
so it's a very defined process. We do it through we do a cost allocation plan for the purpose of getting federal reimbursements through grants like for human services and those sorts of things. So it's a prescribed process, Greg. That's why we don't do it.
God, okay. I
And-
think I understand that.
And we've been taking a look at it. John, we talked through some of this yesterday, that what we're looking at is not a structural problem in the general fund. So if we're looking at our ongoing expenditures, our ongoing revenues, we think we're doing pretty well there. But there are years where, just as John mentioned, there is a cash flow, that certain years you do have a deficit, but it's not that overall long-term structural issue.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Good explanation.
So are we carrying all these replacement costs in the unassigned number right now? Or do we move them into a different?
It just comes out of the unassigned fund balance, yes.
So we've planned for it over 10 years, but we consider it unassigned.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's right.
That seems odd, a little bit. Do you have a question?
I've got a 2,000 foot, so I can come back.
Okay.
Wait, I'm happy flying
Okay.
above the clouds for a minute. I'm happy flying above the clouds for a minute. I can come back.
A very brief overview of some revenue projections. We'll come back in about a month. Our first budget presentation will be on October 14th, and we'll go into these in a little bit more detail. But we met with our financial advisory board in August and had some robust discussions with them, and then internally with staff. And some projections simply come from averages of more official sources, like the State Office of Planning and Budgeting. But we average out of other forecasts to come up with the Denver, Aurora, Lakewood inflation projections, the United States national inflation projection, and then the Denver, Aurora, Lakewood plays into what we're allowed to collect in property tax for the following year, together with growth of the construction base, or our property base. So you see about in the middle of the page, property tax revenue forecast. Then below that is our sales tax, and this is an area where our discussions with the financial advisory board normally focus, because it's the area that's less formulaic. So we're looking at 2025 finishing up this year at a plus 4%, which is better than our budget. We budgeted, now I'm blanking out, 1.5, or was it 2?
Yeah, I think it's 1.5.
Ooh, I'll have to look that up. I'm only looking forward these days, not backwards. 2026, we're projecting a 3.5% increase, so moderate growth. 2027, you see a negative 10%. That's due to the airport closure. We think there will be an impact, not only with the airport itself, but other hotels and localities in town that are planning on using that time frame to do their own remodels and projects. We think there will be a bounce back the following year. In order to get back to the same level as 2026, you can't do a 10% increase. That would only bring you close, but not quite to the same level. 14% brings us slightly higher than the dollar amount for 2026. If you have 100 and you go down to 90, and then you budget another 10% back up, it only gets you to 99.
My brain was inflation adjusted. It's
We had the same conversation, actually.
And then 4% in the out years, which is about a historical average. So
Can you help me here? I'm sorry. I'm confused by this, because I keep thinking, okay, these are forecasts. We're making these forecasts based on what we anticipate will happen, I guess. I'm looking at historical data. I don't get the 14%. It's like, I understand why it may drop by 10% due to all the construction, the closure of the airport, all that stuff. But how can we make a forecast that it's going to increase by 14% walk me through that.
Well, we expect that in
Flat.
27 things will be down, but that in 2028 we'll be back up at the same level as 2026.
So when the
But
airport
slightly
reopens.
adjusted for inflation.
Yeah.
Okay.
The 10% decrease is driven by reduced visits and such because of the airport closure. When the airport reopens, we anticipate
Back to 26 levels.
exactly.
Copy that.
And
so there's the 10% increase right there. Okay, I just
Yeah.
needed to have that explained to me.
And I
It's
think
like,
what
okay.
Jeffrey is bringing up is, a little bit of how we've been conservative in these estimates. If I'm reading your comment correctly, Jeffrey, that there are really two components that are going to drive these increases. What's happening with increases or decreases in visitation, the folks that are here and spending money, and what's happening with inflation. And so I think there's been, through the FAB discussions, I'll let you all report on that, I think the concern is that there's going to be some downward trend in terms of visitation, partly driven by reactions to federal policy, potentially driven by the ability of our community to support service levels that folks are anticipating. And so I think the FAB was anticipating a slight downward trend over the next few years there, and that the bounce back after the airport reopens may not be as strong as we normally see, but that Jeffrey, to your point, there is an inflationary component where the things that are being paid for here are going up at a faster rate than we maybe see in a Colorado CPI or national CPI. And so some of that hole gets filled in. Blending those two together is what results in the maybe more conservative number than you'd see with inflation. That's the logic behind it. Is that a fair? Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll bring back graphs when we present the budget in a month, and sometimes it's easier to see when you actually see where the lines are. Dev fees.
Sorry, I have a little bit more of a question about that. How are we considering, like, construction, purchasing, and all that? The Little Nell replacing all of its carpet and furniture would generate some sales tax.
I will.
And Liz and Stuart have done a little bit of analysis on sales tax, and I believe construction is actually a fairly small percentage of our summer sales tax. Was it 2
Yeah,
to
but
3?
it's gonna be a different level of
Right.
activity, I guess.
Yeah, so let me just make sure. Yep, we're on. Okay. So construction materials over the summer, over the last 4 or 5 years, has averaged about 3% of our total sales tax. We also did analysis of several hotels that are likely to be closed, from what we've heard, to do these various renovations, which would decrease their bed base, right? And so we would have a decrease in sales tax on those rooms. We saw that at being around 12%, 9 to 12%, just depending on the month. So I think that the various components kind of weigh each other out a little bit to kind of what your question is that yes, there'll be more stuff coming into the county for like those construction materials,
$30 million.
whatever, yeah. But there's also going to be less bed base available, which means that there'll be less sales tax on the hotel rooms as well. So again, we're kind of doing our best estimate based on kind of the facts that we know and what the FAB has, the Financial Advisory Board has provided us with their kind of thoughts as well.
And the majority of like a renovation cost, like if you have a 30 million, is actually going to be in the labor and services, not on the materials. And so, but you're right. We expect that we'll see a little bit of a bump in that particular category, but it's offset.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, we have had many discussions back and forth, and it is very difficult to try to weigh out all of the different things that are factoring in. We've had conversations with the city of Aspen and with ACRA, and are trying to pull in just as much information as possible. We feel like the 10% is a good place to be at as far as our planning goes.
Okay. Thank you.
We do have bets going on it, though.
Yeah, we might have to do a countywide pool or
Right.
something like that.
That's taxable, by the way.
John, you can go to the next one.
Oh. Do you
ComDev.
did you want
We
me to go
do
to
ComDev.
ComDev?
Yeah, that's where you-
I've got a slide coming up. Yeah, we can go to this one. For community development, their revenues are difficult to forecast because it's not uncommon to see double-digit increases or decreases from one year to the next. So it tends to be challenging. The blue line on top is their actual revenue, and then the red line on the bottom is what we budgeted for those different years. 2024, you see a big spike. We don't think it will keep increasing from the spike in 24. We think we'll come in this year in 25, less than that. So we're being conservative in the community development forecast. Forecasting, John, if you want to go back 2 slides. Forecasting down 15% for 2025, but that's down off of the spike. And then down moderately another 5% in 2026, and then just very small inflationary increases after that. There are a number of things to factor, whether you're looking at construction inflation, demand, effects on the overall economy, about whether projects will be moving forward or not, effects of our own building code. So this is a conservative forecast. And then at the very bottom, investment income, and this comes from our financial advisors with some input from our financial advisory board.
I think the overall picture is positive. It's more positive than a lot of our neighboring counties and certainly Front Range counties are projecting. It's also very modest when you take inflationary impacts into account. And so it doesn't give us a whole lot of headroom, right? And we're probably going to be utilizing some fund balance to float us through that sales tax downturn in 2027. And so, a lot of good news. I think the more difficult news is on the expenditure side when we get there.
That's unusual for good
I
news to be on the
I know.
expenditure side.
Okay. And then this was just a reminder that all of our major mill levies, with exception of the ambulance district and open space and trails, are subject to TABOR restrictions or our own revenue growth restrictions, right, and statutory restrictions at 5.5%. So regardless of what's happening with values or in the market, we have those restrictions. You'll notice that we did not project any percentages around federal funding. I think we are still really trying to assess the timing and level of impacts from HR 1. We do understand that right now the state is projecting a $1.2 billion revenue loss in their fiscal year 25-26, and then they roll that back to roughly $700 million annually for 2027 through 2028. There is state to local pass-through risk. We're already seeing that as the state begins to anticipate their new fiscal year. There's going to be that same timing with a lot of the health and human services grants and such that will be affected. Most of those will really start to be seen in that 26-27 time frame, but we're still trying to get a handle on what the level is. The state has issued some memos and information trying to anticipate by county impacts, to example, SNAP administration, but the directors are confused because to their knowledge they have not received that SNAP administration funding in the past. And so we're trying to get a handle on the information that we're receiving from the state and squaring that with our revenue projections. It is unlikely that that will be squared when we have to present a budget. And so any strategy we have around federal funding gaps needs to take this uncertainty basically into account. So in terms of, and this is really, really high level, and you'll see a lot of these are numbered the same, which is hence the policy conversation that I think we're going to be working through as we do this year's budget. How we have approached the budget, though, is we know we have major enterprise fund capital projects, the airport and the landfill. Those have both been the subject of ballot questions already. The airport will be subject of yet another ballot question this November for bonding. Our assumption, though, is that those projects are moving forward and those are going to be built into the budget. In terms of our more discretionary funding or the funding that would impact general fund kind of revenues and resources from a staff perspective, and again, I just want to emphasize, we develop a budget that is recommended to this body, and this body makes the decisions. In terms of developing our recommended budget, we're focusing first on staff recruitment and retention. How are we dealing with any changes in market? How are we dealing with inflationary pressures that may change how our market looks compared to other markets we might be competing for employees with? We have capital maintenance. We have had a philosophy of really trying to at least maintain our capital assets to a degree that we don't incur more significant costs down the line, so that our road maintenance is kept up at a level so we don't have to do a precipitous rebuild of a road. But that requires a pretty consistent stream of funding just for capital maintenance, and that goes for roads, facilities, that sort of thing. So staff recruitment and retention, capital maintenance, and then we kind of have these two what I'd consider really competing priorities, and probably still with capital maintenance, which is we have a lot of requests to build internal capacity in different departments. The Sheriff's Department has a pretty robust request based on studies that were presented to this body previously. We have other departments that have capacity requests. And then we also have this looming question out there as to what impacts federal cuts are going to have on programs or areas that are important to this board. And we've already started talking about those, right? We know food security is going to be impacted. SNAP is going to be impacted by federal cuts. we've already seen that our federal lands and federal lands management and protection and safety have been impacted by federal cuts, and we've taken some steps to start to kind of backfill some of those. We're not 100% backfilling, but what we don't have a good handle on as these cuts become more fully realized in that 2026, 2027 timeframe, what kinds of pressures you all are going to be under to backfill and maintain programs, and how you might want to respond to those. Some counties are just saying, we're not backfilling anything, right? We're not going to backfill the Forest Service. We're not going to backfill we're going to focus internally. Staff does not feel that's been this board's approach and is this board's values, that you're going to want to be in the position to do at least some strategic backfilling and protection of services, but we don't know exactly where those are going to come yet. And if we fulfill all of our internal capacity needs, y'all won't have any powder dry, to take on that battle when it comes. Does that make sense? And so part of our big challenge, I think the key policy decision of this year's budget, the theme is, how are we striking this balance? What strategies do we want to employ to address both in some ways? And then, of course, we have new capital, which is non-enterprise. Those would be like road capacity improvement, safety. We have been putting those off, and right now in our budget that we proposed to you, that's still where that sits in priority. But there's that middle layer with capital maintenance and internal capacity and backfill of federal cuts that I think is going to be really, really hard to balance this year. Unless you all say you're not doing X and Y like some counties are, that makes it a lot easier on us. But I'm not sure it's where you want to be as a policy body. So we've got some recommendations for you along these lines. So we're going to give you a really high level, kind of how we're looking at filling out those buckets right now. Do you want me to take these, or do you want these, Connie?
I can start and then you can
Okay.
jump in. Every year we look to see what type of pay increase we could provide. We normally do a pool. If we're budgeting 4.5%, that does not mean employees necessarily get a 4.5%. That's the pool available. And part of that is through pay plan adjustments, movements within the range. A part of it is the cost of living increase. There are other compensation programs like the bilingual pay stipend. So there are a number of items that can go into that and have to be balanced out within the pool that we budget for. This 4.5% is a compromised number. HR reached out to their compensation consultant who recommended a 5%. Based on what they were seeing in market. We've been looking at other partner agencies that range anywhere from 3 to 5% within the valley and beyond. So we settled on a 4.5%, which isn't quite what Melissa was hoping, but it's close.
Are you looking for direction on these today?
If the board has strong feelings, we wanted to present, and we're looking for a general, like, we're headed in the right direction or not. So yes, if the board wants to stop and, give
I just think we haven't
direction.
had benefit to like chew on this a little bit, so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know how other people are feeling, but
Our idea here, Kelly, was to get this information so that when we do present the budget, since we're on a more compressed timeline, you will have had some time to chew on this. So we weren't expecting you to respond to these today, but we wanted you to have the benefit of how we're thinking about things right now, so that when you see the proposed budget, you're more prepared to give that direction. So does that, yeah. Part of that is just anticipating that you're going to have more questions, and we don't have as many work sessions because of all the airport and Vision 2050 meetings we're getting you in.
thank you.
But if there is immediate feedback, we'd like to hear it.
I would like to just make one short comment. You know, for other counties to not fill in for the Forest Service is one thing, but when our county is 84% federal lands, it's a different, we're looking at something different than a lot of other counties. I know Eagle's got a lot of public lands too, but I just saying that it differentiates us significantly from particularly Front Range counties, but other western slope counties as well.
No question. And it's also a key resource for our quality of life, our economy, all of the things that make this place, I think we'd all acknowledge really start there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could, yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey. I was just going to say, to back that up, this is the infrastructure of our natural surroundings, natural world, which we all, appreciate and depend upon in many ways, both for our tourism economy and our quality of life. So, yeah, the federal government should be stepping up for this or helping us figure out how to make it happen. But I consider it to be essential.
And I'm going to come back with at least how we're thinking about it from the budget perspective, which won't specifically answer these questions, but you can start to see how we're thinking about allocation of resources going in. In terms of health insurance, we've been going through a negotiation process in partnership with the Valley Health Alliance. We would have seen an increase, but what we are proposing is a 0% increase on both sides. Really, there's only one significant change to plan design, and that would be to start using a tiered system. So what we have been able to do is negotiate direct contracts, and we've now been able to get enough information where we haven't been able to get direct contracts to see where our costs are at on a per service basis for different providers, as well as quality data. And we want to start providing incentives to use either the providers that we have direct contracts with that are more beneficial than Cigna, or providers that already basically beat Cigna pricing in other areas. So kind of a preferred provider tier. Well, we're not doing that quite. It's not that, but it's a similar concept. So you'd have a preferred provider, but you'd also have then a tier that would be non-preferred, which is still roughly within that Cigna realm, and then out of network. And what we are looking at is structuring some differences in both maximum, the deductible and copay levels based on preferred provider. That structure, we're estimating, provides the savings to have no increase. It also, we believe, if we get enough employers along with us, and we're looking at doing this with the city of Aspen, we're hoping to bring other employers along that will provide the incentive for those negotiations to continue in the future, so that we prefer not to have a tiered system, to be honest. But this is where there's some success, and we can bring back more detail on that, but we're assuming right now that we'd have this kind of preferred provider.
What's the criteria
Through the
for
Health
choosing a
Alliance.
preferred provider?
What's that?
What is the criteria for choosing a preferred provider?
Yeah, so it's basically a cost or direct contract analysis, Kelly, and it's only at the hospital level right now. Valley View, I'll be quite transparent, is the one hospital that has not participated on either front with us. But
So what does that mean for our employees when they need service?
well, for services that are most services are provided either through, Grand Valley or AVH. We have those bookends, but what it will mean is just a differential in copay. So there will be a difference in the percentage that's paid to utilize those higher dollar services.
And how will employees know that?
Yeah, so that's the big conversation. We're putting together a educational program for open enrollment and such, and that would be.
The Valley Health Alliance or we Picking County?
It would be, in this case, Picking County, where we'd be using our broker services, which they just changed their name, to help us put those educational materials together, and we'd be doing it in partnership with City of Aspen.
I think I'm just a little uncomfortable with not being able to communicate impacts prior. Right? Like for us to make it, to provide this direction, like I have to assume a lot of people are using services that are based out of Valley View Hospital in some way, that, to make this decision, not understanding, like, what does that mean for your doctor that you go to every year?
And we
to
can
have to
bring,
change that?
we can bring that back more specifically.
What is the savings?
About 5% in total.
And that would
cost.
We haven't,
exclude
I mean,
Valley.
what
Few
is our?
$100,000.
I'd like more information, I guess, because
Okay.
I feel like we've held costs really stable over many years. So I just wonder if there's a trade-off between an added employee premium to retain your current level of service. I don't know.
And we can have a larger discussion. There's a longer term strategy also that we should probably talk about in terms of negotiating and bringing Valley View to the table where they haven't been.
Those are my initial reactions to that element. Francie, you have your hand up?
Yes, I think anything without Valley View is really hard on many of our employees.
It won't be without Valley View.
Yeah.
They just aren't in the preferred provider tier.
Well, that means it costs more.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. We can have a broader discussion. I think, like I said, I think you're going to see other employers going this direction.
This is just the biggest change we've been asked to contemplate,
It is
as
in a long
opposed
time.
to some additional
Costs.
some additional expense to employee premiums that they pay, or some drawdown of reserve in our savings on our health
Yeah,
insurance.
and we have
accounts.
done some drawdown on reserves in years past not to have those changes, particularly this last year.
Yeah.
We're taking some risk against fund balance, still not having an increase.
Okay. Francie.
So haven't we been with the Valley Health Alliance? Hasn't that sort of been a cooperative group of insured? What happens to them if Picking County pulls out? That's a lot of people.
We're not pulling out. As a matter of fact,
So it would still
if
be
we
part of
don't
it.
do this, I would say Valley Health Alliance probably has very limited benefit to us.
So this would be like a subcategory under our, what we've been doing, this, I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Why don't we bring it back
Okay.
and have a broader discussion? It's really a way of trying to provide incentives for employees to make more informed choices around cost. And that's what we are not really doing a whole lot of right now. The cost to the plan can be radically different between providers. But the cost to employees is not. And so there's no market incentive for employees to be making choices there.
Okay. The quality can also be very different.
We've looked at quality and
having
there is not, there's,
Personally needed to change some
Yeah.
providers.
yeah.
Sorry, Jeffrey, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to go off slide for a second. 'cause I think we're getting closer to time, and both, you're welcome. So I'm going to go off slide for a second, and you're welcome to come back on both. And this is sort of the freshman question. Is there a way to break down silos? And one answer might be, well, that's what the general fund is. But is there a way, we do less at open space and trails, but more in health and human services. And that's, and you could come back and say, Jeffrey, that's where we're drawing on general fund. That's fine. But is there any other way that we can organizationally, without restrictions through the way the tax dollars were generated, to break down those silos? And again, it could be a longer conversation. And then, and again, the second part is it worth hiring twice the number of grant writers in 2025, 26, or we've literally exhausted federal options and we should just batten down the hatches?
Yeah, so on both of those, so outside of the general fund, when we get into special revenue funds, generally the use of those dollars is restricted to a certain purpose. So you can't take surpluses that we might have in open space and trails and put them towards, human services or road and bridge unless it fits within the 4 squares of that ballot language. Right. So that those silos were created intentionally and with legal protections. To change those, you would have to go back and maybe have a ballot question or do those sorts of things.
You can hear where I'm going, which is like, for example, healthy community. Do we just take out the environmental stuff and say, okay, we're only doing this and we're doing this really well? We don't have that free cash flow.
There's more discretion, I think, and how those. I think that is more permissive, and so you all have some more discretion in terms of focusing those dollars, and that would be a conversation that we could have with human services that's driving that. The most flexibility you have is in the general fund. Yeah, and that's why you also have the least room sometimes to move there, because that's where most of these questions go. In terms of balancing these competing priorities in an environment where we don't know a whole lot, what we are targeting is to build the budget in such a way that the board can pull out $1 million, maybe $1.5 million, but I think it's more likely going to be $1 million more into a restricted, kind of like what you did with the housing dollars, right? When you had the $5 million, or what you've done with nonprofits more recently, but pulling out a $1 million fund that is dedicated to you guys being able to address these different requests that are going to come your way to backfill federal agencies. And we'd hope to be able to spread that out over 2 or 3 years, so you can either provide an off-ramp or, a bridge. In terms of if you want to create this room in the operating budget for an ongoing allocation, we're going to have to cut. We're going to have to cut other places to do that if that's going to be the case. So that we weren't anticipating recommending that at this point, unless that's really board direction. But our goal right now would be to set aside $1 million or $1.5 million, hold those dollars until the second quarter to kind of see. There's a lot of consternation and uncertainty about what might happen with the economy right now. Is it are the projections we gave you of modest growth going to hold? Are we going to have a downturn earlier than expected? Projections are literally all over the place right now. Some are really optimistic, some are pessimistic, some are right in the middle, like ours. So what we'd encourage you to do is hold until the second quarter, kind of see how are we doing locally? How is our economy performing against, the expectations, because sometimes we perform very differently than the rest of the world. And then look at allocating those funds, or beginning to allocate those funds at that point.
So there'll be discretionary funds, it'll be a separate discretionary fund account, sort of?
Yeah, kind of like what we did with housing. We created another color of fund balance, really, for you to spend down.
Okay.
Then look, we've got very modest revenue growth, as we showed you through the projections. Really targeting those to prioritizing capacity increases internally. It will be pretty modest what we're able to recommend. Maybe 3 or 4 FTE across. How many did we have requested? Do you remember that off the top?
The requests were less, I would say, overall this year. In the general fund, 10 to 12 positions. I think we could probably fund 3.
So we'll be looking at bringing those recommendations back. We've gone through presentations with the leadership team and finalizing kind of recommendations around that. And then, obviously we're going to look at continuing our funding for capital maintenance. That's been on a fairly consistent basis over the last several years, and continuing to do that for bridge replacements, road maintenance, facility maintenance, that sort of thing. But this is kind of how we're talking about just big picture, addressing that uncertainty around federal.
Go ahead.
I didn't hear anything in terms of stop. I heard revenues and expenditures, but I didn't hear anything. So for example, at a prior meeting, we talked about a kiln, and there was $365,000 allocated to a kiln, and we don't need to spend time on that, but are there additional things the board should think about that would free up capacity in the general fund that we should stop doing? Redstone Bridge, just, again, not to go down a rabbit hole of an individual project, but are there additional things, given the uncertainty, the board should put further brakes on, or the organization should think about stopping?
On the capital maintenance side, I'd be pretty hesitant
Right.
to recommend any of that. I do think we're going to have some, you're going to be hearing some presentations today. Our electrification project has gotten much more expensive, and we could spend all this fund balance on that if we went forward with at least the plans as they stand now. We're going to be reworking those and bringing those back. But I do think we're going to have to look at some of those priorities, and we're going to have to look at if costs are going up as we're on this learning curve for these projects. Does this still rise to the level of being prioritized over some of these other things that we're talking about now? Because times have changed since we initiated some of these projects. In terms of programmatic, I think we'd be looking for some guidance from the board. What do you think we're doing too much of? We hear typically about what we're doing too little of, not what we're doing too much of. And if there are areas that you feel we've overemphasized in the budget, then or you're seeing overemphasized in the community, then we probably could use some guidance from the board about what those are.
But, sorry.
Yeah.
So,
keep
but
going.
your point is, like, if we said, Alex and Michael aren't here, so if we said, look, let's pause the jail again, we'll put it out to 26, I think what you just said is, I'm hearing it's going to go up 7% or 10% if we put it off. So
That's correct.
from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, get it done, because we're still in a world of escalating prices and cost of labor. So I'm not hearing you put the brake on it. I know you're putting it back to us, but
Yeah. Well, on the physical infrastructure side, certainly things like construction and maintenance, those are going up at a faster rate than our revenues still. We have some structural kind of inflationary issues there. So putting them off generally doesn't benefit us unless you're willing to stop them altogether and
But
not
it-
do them.
And it would
Yeah.
also be nice to get them in before the 27 sort of added layer of complexity, Lumberyard Airport.
Yeah, or after,
Or
you
after,
know, but
right.
yeah, you don't want to be in a position where you have to.
But
know,
you wouldn't
right
go
in
back
that
to Michael
window.
and say it's 7 years out now,
What?
a jail replacement.
Maybe.
I'm just-
I mean, I do think that is a conversation that,
Mhm.
you know, we're having, like with these improvements. Is this a 5-year window now, you know, to get us through airport construction and such? Probably. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
From my point of view, the one area that gives me heartburn is the cost increase on building electrification, which if we were to do that full increase of what new proposals came back at, that would give the board some very challenging budget decisions, I think.
And you're going to hear more about that coming up here, but
But we like,
Today, right?
we like the infomercial, though. That was helpful.
today, yeah.
That's
What
helpful,
are,
you're
um,
saying that.
What are the goals for the unassigned fund balance?
Well, we would again, the unassigned or do you mean this 1 million or do you mean the overall unassigned?
I mean, the overall unassigned.
Yeah, so the overall unassigned, I think, we always recommend, we've tried to keep that at a minimum of around $4 million. And it's for the unforeseen. It's for when the COVID happens that we can ramp up the grant programs like we did quickly. That if we had a bridge inspection that didn't catch something that's terribly wrong and we've got to do an emergency replacement, that we're able to do that without impacting that minimum threshold that the GFOA recommends, and affecting other programs where we'd have to make precipitous decisions. And so we try and keep it for those purposes, and we've used them, and it's also replenished quicker than we've generally projected also. And so once we start getting to that 4 million mark of unassigned fund balance, Kelly, we start to recommend you all hold tight and leave something for the unexpected economic downturn, the next COVID, the next bridge,
So
that
then
sort of
does
thing.
the projected spending plan spend down 11.5 million of that? 'Cause we have over 15.
I think we will be, with the proposed 5-year plan, I think we'll be closer to that 4 million by the end of the 5-year plan. We're still working on tweaking numbers and going back and forth on what we can bring as a proposal, but it is tighter within that 5-year time frame than it has been over the last few years since COVID.
Thank you. A few more minutes?
That's we're about there. New capital, non-enterprise. If we get grants, we'll suggest it to you. If not, we're really not going to be proposing that in our budget. And I do think grants are, which is my other. You said hire more. We've actually contracted for grant writing services, and it's a fairly scalable service. So I think we're able to take advantage of all the opportunities we're identifying now. So I don't think there's a lot of bang for the buck in investing more there. And that's it.
Will we get a more comprehensive view of what the full human services gap is?
I'm not sure that we'll have that at the time that we present the budget to you. There are so many unknowns, and they're still trying to work through what impacts are, and they may not really even find out what those impacts are until later on in 2026.
And I also think, Kelly, it's going to be more complicated than just our programs. I think it's going to be how are our partners impacted. So what's happening with food security? What's happening with reproductive health? What's happening with immunizations? All of those funding streams are changing. We're starting to see some immediate impacts now. And we've been bringing those to you kind of piecemeal, like community health services, right? But I don't think we're going to see how those impacts really affect these agencies probably until 26, 27.
So
Why don't
so
we
far,
guess?
so
Like,
far the
how much do they
cuts-
get? Like, can't we know the biggest number, even if it's not the most realistic?
So far, the cuts have not been large for the county. And as John mentioned, it's been more on our partner agencies than the county itself. Many of the cuts we've seen have been under 100,000 and are areas that can be absorbed or adjusted. So I don't think that's the bigger impact. The SNAP program has been fully federally funded. If that's cut back, it's not that the county sees a gap or a loss in funding unless we decided to step in and provide other county-only benefits that are outside of the SNAP program. And that's where your pool of money, if we can provide that, would come in, of where the board would like to step in to fill gaps that are left. So I have not seen a lot of actual realized cuts to funding on our own side.
And I guess the exercise is a little confounding, right? So, for example, if we're talking about Forest Service cuts, are we? Yeah.
Sorry, I was talking about human service specifically.
USDA.
So, like, you know, Mountain Family Health, right? They were in a real bad situation even prior to COVID relative to like Medicaid enrollment. And, like, should we look at that as sort of a lesson learned for a planning? You know, I don't think we have to necessarily be accurate, but like, what would the biggest pot look like? Like, don't our partners know how much federal funding they get? You know,
Well,
generally, like what they plan for, and like, you know. So I guess that's just what I'm wondering a little bit. Like, if it's sort of hard to take a policy decision along the lines of like, we're gonna decline any environmental grant request, you know, because we think we're gonna need that money for direct human services, but we don't know if we should be planning for a $1.5 million pot or a $5 million pot, you know? I don't know. I'm just, I like totally get the opacity of it, but I'm just sort of like, what would we do in like a real emergent situation to plan best?
Well, and I think, you know, what we did was we flipped it and said, how much do we think we can afford to set aside without putting ourselves in a position where, you know, we may put ourselves in economic distress.
I get that. I guess I'm just wondering, like, if the pot was going to be bigger, maybe I'd think a little more critically about adding certain FTEs that I'd rather not cut in the future. You know, like things that are becoming. I just want to think about it in terms of like commitments to long-term expenses that, you know, how does that chip away at a pot we might want for more emergency response in a way. So I don't think emergency response is the correct way to backfill or, you know. So that's a little bit of, I could use, as we talk about this more, could use some more help.
Yeah, no, and I think we can talk about what that impact on fund balance would be for incremental adds or incremental subtractions if the board wants to give, you know, that direction too. It's all going to fit within these modest revenue growth pieces. That's going to be the rub. we are working with folks like Mountain Family Health and trying to project out, and they're having the same challenges. You know, we ask these questions. We can say how much they get Medicaid, and we could do the simple math exercise. Gosh, what if this went down 20%? What's the hole? That hole is probably going to be bigger than we can fill on our own, but we can do those exercises. You know, if we're looking at feds, I think we know how many FTEs have been cut. You know, what would 100% of that backfill look like? What would 50% look like? I think very quickly we're going to get in the tens of millions a year. I do think these federal programs have brought a lot of money.
Yeah, I think
The impact on us is going to
We
be
should know
different. Yeah, it's going to be more administrative.
yeah, I mean, it just, you know, it does make me wonder something like, okay, can we replace tasers and radios in 2 years instead of this year? You know, if we want money. Like that's a little bit of what I'm trying to think about.
Yeah. And so, and yeah, we'll bring that back to you. I think what you're going to find, because we do 5-year planning, moving around those fund balance spends doesn't change the bottom line at the end of the year, at the end of the 5 years. Yeah. It's removing the expenses that does it, if we want to do that. Yeah.
Well, except for conditions change amidst that 5 years, that may affect
Potentially.
those
Yeah.
plans.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions right now?
I'd like to grab a sandwich.
Okay. I know we could use, sorry, we're running over. Hopefully we'll catch
Oh,
up.
sorry,
but
that
let's
took
take
longer.
We need to
About a
turn the
10-minute
lighting down.
break. I think the energy is low on this side of the table.
I think
All right, welcome back everyone to the Picken
is
County
just a
Board of
sweet-
County Commissioners work session on Tuesday, September 16th. We reorganized our agenda a little bit and took a little break prior to this conversation on the Renewable Energy Mitigation Program 2026 budget discussion and 5-year outlook. And I'm sorry, we are running a little behind, so sorry to staff.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kara Silber-Noggle, Deputy County Manager, and I have Connie Baker as Budget Director and Alex Sanchez. What is your title?
Community Development Analyst.
And expert in REMP is really what it is. So thank you all. We are coming to you today somewhat because of the change in the budget process. We wanted to be able to have some time to give you an overview of what we're seeing in the REMP program as it's been changing, and as really credit to Alex and a lot of the work that he's been doing over the past couple of years tracking it, as we're seeing some changes with different codes, and be able to give you that overview and some direction ahead of the 2026 budget process. So with that, so today we'll give you a little bit of background about REMP, and then look at what we're seeing with the fund as we look ahead. So REMP was launched in 2000 with the city of Aspen, with really the goal was to eliminate the need for exterior energy. I think we've had some conversations, you all yesterday had some conversations about, is incentives versus regulation the right way to get what we want for the community? Since then, and especially since 2016 was the first energy code, I believe, you know, as building and energy codes have really ramped up over the past few years, we've started to see what does that REMP collection look like. And, you know, as we start regulating essentially more external energy, the fees that are collected, and then how we use those fees for achieving our community goals. And so as of right now, the REMP fees are collected with the intention to reduce fossil fuels generated by energy consumption, to help administer the building and energy codes, and to also do education to the community about energy efficiency, which is really achieved through CORE and a lot of that work, and then achieve other goals through the Pitkin County Climate Action Plan, such as your microgrid and electrification projects. So I just wanted that background as we look at where REMP is now and start to think about the future through some of new opportunities for REMP as we look ahead. So with that, maybe I'll hand it to Alex to talk about what we're seeing.
Yeah, so I think, as it's been mentioned to this board in the past, the REMP program, the thought was that the fund collections were always going to go away. And really, with the most recent energy code change that implemented the 200 million BTU budget, that did significantly, or we project it will significantly decline the amount we collect, but it will not go away. We might see a short increase in collections, but at some point it will start to taper off. And there's a couple of factors at play here. One is the implementation of the 200 million BTU. That does limit the maximum amount of REMP somebody could pay, whereas previously there really wasn't a cap or a limitation on it. The other thing is we implemented a HERS, a Home Energy Renewable score. And so that score, or in order to achieve that score, more and more of the renewables that are placed on site are going to achieve the score. And as we ratchet down that score, we primarily believe that a lot of the renewables will go exclusively to achieving that HERS score, and less will be available to offset the exterior energy, thus causing more payments into the REMP program. So now to give a little more context into that 200 million BTU, previously, prior to the implementation of that, the average REMP payment was somewhere around $190,000, and the highest single REMP payment we saw on a property was upwards of $740,000. Just by implementing the 200 million BTU budget, we saw a decrease in the average to $71,000, and that the highest REMP payment somebody could make is $120,000. Now, while you see a dollar figure there, this also equates to energy, and we've really decreased the amount of energy that somebody could make on the exterior of a property. And so we wanted to bring this for you to show a real win there with the implementation of this. And again, how we are seeing that actually in practice. But again, this will have financial implications into projects now that are submitting and under review or being issued. They are not having the $740,000 payments that we are tracking. They're having a much lesser amount. But again, that in coordination with the HER score, less of the renewables we believe will be able to allow them to be eligible for refund. We think a lot of this, once that project closes out, will essentially become unobligated.
Good question.
Yes.
Just about the reimbursements. Somebody mitigates and they expect their deposit back. Is that reflected in this? Is this the place to look for? I don't think this is the place to look for that.
No.
But I was just trying to figure out how do we. I don't understand what that looks like.
Yeah, in a couple of slides, we'll talk somewhat of the policy practice on how the refunds are handled to make sure that they are refunded in a more timely manner and earlier in the process, so there is less of a lag time as kind of the code is written versus how we handle that inside staff.
And we're always sure that we're capable of reimbursing that.
Correct.
Right.
That will be.
And I think one thing Alex will speak to is some of the administrative changes and policy changes that they've made, as well as with the code, is that over time we also are seeing less of those refund requests. So feeling like maybe that mitigation fee is more aligned absolutely at the front end of it, and that's both through code changes and the administrative decision. So hopefully we get a little bit more consistency about the collection and less refunds on the front end.
Okay, interesting. Thanks.
And so specifically on this next one, right there at the top of the line on September 10th, when the AIS was written, the restricted fund had $12,780,000. Now that is a big number, but those are projects that are currently active and could request a REMP refund or be eligible in some way. So those are the ones we set aside because we don't know. Once they close out and have reached the 120 days after certificate of occupancy, then we know that those funds become unrestricted or unobligated, as we stated. So that number, while high, has a potential refund that we're not sure of. There could be a change in technology, there could be a change in design. A lot of factors are at play for those active projects, so we really have to hold those aside. So that's ensuring that we don't ever spend more funds here and then have some large influx of refund requests where the county would essentially be liable to refund those and the fund balance would not be there. So we've kind of separated out of what we're deeming as a restricted fund versus the unobligated, which we talk about and start to discuss as funds that you guys can spend here.
Right. Thank you.
So for 2025, our estimates are 1.7 million in unobligated funds. We know what Q1 and Q2 are, and at point of writing this, Q3. Really, the Q4 is still the question mark, and it's got the note there that refunds may still be requested for projects in that time period. We can project out for when the 120 days is after certificate of occupancy, but that still allows them to request a refund if they've either mitigated, reduced energy, or something else. So that Q4 is still just hanging there as a potential. We will see, and we do a true up. I essentially move those from the restricted revenue or the restricted fund account into an unobligated once that period has occurred, so we know that they can be spent. The other thing that we wanted to show here is the chart down below. Each year you'll see the unobligated funds, and you will see the percent that are coming from the different codes. So we have the 2013 Energy Code, the 2016, 2020, and the 2022. This is one of the challenges that we have with kind of tracking these. We're not looking just at one code and the implications of that code. Oftentimes we're looking at 4, even 5 different codes and projects on those codes. So it might surprise you to see a project from the 2013 Energy Code. That was something that was submitted, say, in 2014, 2015, and is still an active project or was inactive as of this year and closed out. So our construction is very unique. Sometimes we have projects that go for as long as 10 years. Sometimes we have projects that are closed out in 3 to 4 years. So we're really looking across all of those different codes and tracking all of these projects to a really granular level to be able to understand which code it was on, when it was closed out, what the requirements were, and then when those funds become unobligated. But as you can see here, there is no consistency. If you look at the 2016 code, in 2022, a large percent of the unobligated funds came from that amount. In 2025, there's 17% coming from that amount. So we couldn't say in this one code, we can always assume 50% refunds or X amount refunds. It really varies. And so that's been one of the complexities. But since taking over this and really tracking it and the analysis we've done year over year, we have our arms around this to a much better degree than previously did. And we are no longer going with assumptions. We are really basing this off actuals. And again, actuals based on the various codes, which is another layer in the analysis, but we're able to do that and come back with you when we start to talk of the estimates and projections going forward as well. So is there any questions on the fund outlook? Next, we'll be talking of some of the policy and procedural changes that have happened as well that coincide with this.
I'll just make a comment.
Go ahead, Francie.
I did a fellowship in math at Princeton, and it was called uncertainty. I think this is it.
Yeah. Yes, this would fall under that.
And I think Alex is capturing well the ability to try and understand this uncertainty, so credit of all the work he has done to start to track this.
So yes, what the other piece that our staff has done is around the policy and the process regarding REMP. So previously, a REMP refund needed to be requested at any point in the project or 120 days after the certificate of occupancy was issued. But the onus was on the applicant to request that, and sometimes it could fall through the crack or there could be some errors in that timeline. So what our staff are now doing is if a building permit has come in with a rent payment, but at some point they've submitted a change order, either reducing exterior energy or increasing renewable energy that could be used for the exterior energy, staff is initiating that refund request at that point in time. So we are getting those refund requests during the construction phase, which is, we are hoping, going to cut down on the lag time or any potential errors that might happen later on in the process. So those refunds are happening in real time during the change order process, and ensuring that an applicant doesn't reach the end or is close to the 120 days after C of O and then realizing that they need to go through it and again having some type of error issue at that point. So that is another thing that is happening. So we are trying to get on that as soon as possible, which is just another thing staff is doing to really try and ensure that there's nobody falling through the cracks or any projects that are eligible for a rent-free fund getting it as soon as they can.
That's great.
So now Kara and Connie can talk a little bit about the 2026 budget and the projections around that too.
I'm happy to.
So the 2026 budget and 5-year plan that's in your packet uses those revenue assumptions that Alex and Kara mentioned. And these would be the unobligated funds, so revenue that we're sure we will not have to refund. And projecting 1.5 million in 2026 and 2027, but then projecting decreases through the course of the 5-year plan. There are a few just fixed overhead costs that go along with the fund. That's a fairly small dollar amount, about $38,000, and is really kind of offset by interest income within the fund. We have the core request, and I believe what we have in 2026 is what they actually requested. So that is their full request. We've kept a similar amount in 2027, and then we've simply decreased the amount going to core according to the percentage decreases in the revenue in the fund. So assuming that the revenue decreases over time, we would need to also be gradually decreasing the core contribution. As far as other costs in the plan, we've been planning for a while to use the REMP funds to make up the difference in our building electrification projects, the part that's not covered by the DOLA grant. The dollar amounts that you see here in this 5-year plan are based on our current 2025 budget for the electrification process. So the 1.4 million for the library and then 1.1 million for Health and Human Services would be the gap between the DOLA grant and the cost of the project according to what's in the budget now. We know that that cost is changing and there are some larger differences. This plan does not reflect that. So in a way, it's hard to know what should go first when you're presenting things. This is a placeholder with the intent, and depending on board's decisions around the electrification, we can come back and make some modifications to this plan. But you see with these included, and I didn't mention in 2027, there's 200,000 as a placeholder for a housing unit electrification. In 2025, the board approved a supplemental request to pay for the electrification of, was it the Elk Run housing unit?
Yeah.
That was 175,000. And in talking with Ashley and Andrew, they recognize that in the future there could be other employee housing units that the county owns that get to a certain point where maybe the renter moves out. A renovation needs to be done. If there are boilers that need to be replaced, that could be a good time to step in and do an electrification of that housing unit. So this is just a placeholder in 2027 for a potential electrification project for an employee housing unit. So again, these are our placeholders. What this does with fund balance, we started out, or we believe we'll start the 2026 budget year with about $2 million in fund balance. This draws down fund balance by $736,000. It gets you to about 1.3 million. You see the remaining fund balance over the course of the plan. These are estimates. Our revenue can end up changing. As Alex mentioned, there are a lot of numbers involved in that, and it's difficult to project. But gives the board an idea of a general course of action for spending down these REMP funds.
So the goal today is just we wanted to update the board of what we're seeing as those codes are changing. I think last year we had anticipated $1 million, and through the work that Alex is doing and as we're seeing how it relates to the codes, wanted to let you know what we're seeing is actually a 1.5 million revenue projection, and direction from the board for the 2026 budget, as Connie said, for the contribution to core and moving up the electrification for HHS and library payback to the general fund was the original intent. Understanding maybe that is a placeholder given later conversations you're having this afternoon.
Jeffrey.
So I guess it's a question also for this board, but given the internal needs and sort of that we need to heat and cool our library, kind of like always, wouldn't it make more sense to underfund third parties and fund ourselves with the REMP dollars, and not to skip to the next meeting, but wouldn't it make more sense to take care of ourselves and our own climate goals before we take care of Garfield's, just to pick on the pool?
I would say that is the question that, that's why we wanted to give you all the information so you all could have that policy discussion amongst yourselves.
And therein lies the existential question of Picken County's support to core. every year.
Well,
The provenance of REMP.
But sorry, and the follow-up is that, so this board, though, outside of funding core, does not have any seats on the core board. So my concern continues to be that we generate revenue and income in Pitkin County and then continue to fund, along with the oil and gas dollars, for stuff further afield. That was a Garfield joke for those.
Yeah. And back to, how we've identified the use of REMP funds, right? It's for administering the building and energy code. It's for administering the county's climate action plan. And I think where CORE has been a really valuable partner is also redistributing those, right? We're collecting from the larger homes, redistributing to help those energy efficiency and community education programs that we as staff are not taking on and have not taken on. So as you all are debating, the how to use REMP funds in the future, the value, that is the value that we see a lot of what CORE has been doing is helping to take those funds and spread them across the county for additional energy efficiency improvements.
I would say counties.
And that is also a discussion that this board can have in the future too about if it stays focused in the county or the region.
Yes, Greg.
So this is a touchy question because it doesn't involve the provenance of REMP, how REMP was created by the city and the county, how CORE was created around REMP, or REMP was created around CORE, and how that's evolved. And what we've seen is the county and the city both have taken on more ability to do their own energy projects and mitigation projects, which was great. When CORE started, they didn't have the capacity, and so that's how CORE came about. Since then, we have been funding CORE to a lesser extent, and CORE has become a nonprofit and taken the electeds off the CORE board through our own decisions and my advice to them, actually, because what CORE needed to do is start finding other sources of revenue, which they've done in a stellar way. REMP is still about 50% of CORE's funding. So if we defund CORE, we'll cripple them. But they have been stepping up to the plate in the last couple of years through philanthropy, fee-for-service, grants, and knocking it out of the park, quite honestly. And they've increased their ability to serve others, including other counties. They could probably argue that they don't serve Garfield County with Pitkin County dollars because they are, I think we're maybe 55% now is coming from outside of REMP. But what this merits is a presentation from them or a presentation to you from the parties who understand how this has come about before we just decide, well, that's a third party, let's defund it, because that would go against 30 years of precedent in building a climate organization, which has been really, really valuable and effective for the community. So it's an easy thing to look at if you don't know and I think you do know a lot about CORE. So I just want to make sure that we get the full story before we decide to do something, because that would be I'm going to say a rash thing to do.
And let me just offer one point of clarification. We did recently hear from CORE on a presentation of how they're spending the funds and their priorities, et cetera. Just as a reminder, I think you may have been on vacation.
Oh, this is when I was in
which was
in
an
August.
ironic
So Tara came in when I was out of town.
Yeah.
for you. But,
Oh, you weren't here. No
So if
wonder.
you still want to defund them after all that, I don't know what to say. I
Jeffrey.
disagree.
I think what I was pointing to is the antinomies, that we have two conflicting priorities. And the question for the board was, do we prioritize ourselves and our own needs relative to a 2030 mission, or do we continue down this path where we as a county don't look like a good citizen? We're not electrifying our own buildings, but we're saying our building code requires all the residential users to do what we should be doing. And it wasn't a criticism of CORE other than that we have an exterior energy user in Pitkin County, a residence, and we're funding renewables or electrification of a home in Garfield. And so I was just saying there's a mismatch in sort of, let's call it, I'm not going to call it the Fed's dual mandate because then someone will try to replace me, but that was a Fed joke. The dual mandate of we have the 2030 goals of Pitkin County, we have 2030 client goals, and then I understand we fund a third party that funds the valley. And so I was just trying to see if this board had a further prioritization of those sort of competing antinomies.
Right. I copy that. It's a difficult question and a complicated one, which merits further conversation.
Then this, then.
I'm not prepared to defund CORE today. I'm sorry.
Right, yeah.
Again, I would just repeat, because for some reason, that's not what I asked. I asked the
You
board.
suggested it.
I suggested funding priorities relative to 3 goals. And building electrification is one, which we, Pitkin, have charged the community as well, which is 2. And we continue to mandate that residences convert and electrify. But everything that's come back in front of us so far, we've said, hey, airport, you guys go forward with gas boilers. Cool, because you need heating. So it just feels like we're not walking the walk in each of these conversations. We're saying, well, CORE's going to go do it. So that's where I'm coming.
Interesting perspective. Okay.
Sorry if I've said any more.
No. These are the tense trade-offs in a resource scarce environment.
An ambitious electrification
Where we don't
environment.
have resources to do all of the things that we may wish to do. I would agree with Greg. I don't think we're endeavoring to defund CORE today. And I do think we would have a much broader and intensive conversation with our partners before suggesting as much. But with that, I do want clarification that the request you've put in front of us includes the amount that CORE came to us for. We didn't provide direction at that time, right? We listened to how they wanted to spend the money and assumed we would come back to it for further input on our financial landscape today. And so I want to kind of check in and see if board members are supportive of our full request that they've made of us for next year, if we need to revisit the amount requested and what we might need to know to make a decision prior to that.
Can I
Sorry,
ask?
Francie
Go
and then
ahead.
Greg.
I would say to Jeffrey, in terms of the county taking care of its own business instead of dispersing funds to other people, CORE helps those who can't afford to help themselves. It's not like when we're asking people who are building a $10 million house to electrify their house, Jeffrey.
I'm looking at the numbers, sorry.
And it's a completely different program than electrifying big mansions. You know, I mean, I don't think it's hypocritical of us to ask people who are building big houses to use renewable energy and then not electrify our own buildings. Because some people have the money to do it and some people don't. And CORE takes care of those who don't, and we don't have the money to do all the projects that we want to do. So I don't really agree with you on your comments. But did CORE ask us for $1.5 million when they were here?
No, they asked for the amount that is in here, which is $825,550 was CORE's request for
$825.
for 2026.
Last year we gave them $750.
Last year we gave them $783,750, and that was funding CORE's full request.
For what?
That did fund CORE's. That was CORE's full request last year.
Are you asking us to make comments now about how much we should give them this year?
I don't know if that's where we're at, but this
That's
is
not
what's
what staff is
presented.
asking for, just to be clear. Yeah. I think what was introduced is a policy conversation that this board, I think, has wrestled with. Kelly, to your point, it's been a long-standing question. I think, Jeffrey, you're introducing, hey, there are other ways we could look at using these dollars. And Greg, I think you're looking from a historical and policy perspective that, gosh, that's a change, and it is. Legally, these are the board's dollars to allocate according to addressing the impact that they were collected for, right? So it's not an impact fee, but it is kind of like a impact fee. So that is the legal constraint, whether you choose to do county projects or fund carbon mitigation in the community, or some combination of those two, is a policy decision that you make. You can't take these dollars and mitigate parks or needs or human service needs or that sort of thing. You all know that. It's got to be for the carbon reduction purposes that they were collected for. But this board does have really broad discretion in how you do that. And that's the policy question. I think we were just making sure you understood where we stand
I
going
mean,
in.
the EIS does say, does BoC support
Yeah.
this recommendation for the budget and
Yes.
5-year plan? So if that's not what we're doing, then we can revisit some of this, but it'd be helpful to know why.
If I could, I just want to say I do support what you've come up with, but I'm also kind of looking at the next presentation and thinking, well, what's going to come up there that's going to surprise us? And I'm wondering, should we be having that conversation before this one? And that might change our calculus somewhat. I'm still steadfast in supporting CORE and its original mission and our original commitments to fund conservation, electrification in the community, which I think it has done well. And I think it would be a real a tragedy to kick the legs out from under them now. So I'm still going to be stridently in favor of supporting CORE, but I also kind of want to know what's the rest of the story you haven't told us today yet. If that's fair.
Yeah, it's absolutely fair, and I think it's good for you to have an understanding after you've met this obligation to CORE. There is still fund balance. There are still REMP dollars here. They are not necessarily sufficient to address the funding issue that we're about to talk to you about. But we're also not asking for a decision on that yet because we're exploring other alternatives, but trying to make the board aware of, hey, we've hit a problem here with how we are pursuing electrification. Here's how we're approaching it, and you all now have some of this information to understand, oh, well, maybe something could come from here. Maybe we need to think about scoping the project differently. Maybe we're going to suggest a different approach going forward.
Yeah.
If I could add to
Or
that, I appreciate that, and I'd love to hear about that.
Yep.
I don't know if it makes sense or not, but with this change and the backing away of federal funding for an industry that is tooled up to such a great extent, I'm just wondering if some of the industry might have bandwidth and material out there that they're trying to, it might be easier to get our hands on things. That could be a false assumption, but I'm wondering is the market, is there a depression in the renewable energy market that we could take advantage of and perhaps get something that's less inflated? Ryan's shaking his head no, like that's silly.
Well,
but I just wonder.
And I think what you're going to find is the unanticipated costs have more to do with what we didn't know about what would have to happen with the structure and existing. It's not about the
Complexity
like
of
that
a
stuff we
problem.
had pretty dialed. It was the other stuff that came up as we went through the process.
The
I
new
think,
complexities of our remodel, I thank you. I get it. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it fair to say we think this looks okay and we may change it?
You're right. And
And that you will bring this back as part of our budget.
Yes, yes.
Like one of our starred point of decision
Yeah.
things
More
in the
information,
budget
but a
process.
good conversation. I appreciate
And I
the
want to
conversation.
acknowledge, I think a year ago when we were struggling with, what did you call the class in Princeton? The uncertainty?
Uncertainty was the name of the class.
Well, yeah, the uncertainty around REMP, which thank you, Alex, for the work that you've done. This is a really different 5-year plan than we thought we were working with
Yeah.
a year or two ago, which is the other thing I think we wanted to highlight for you, that we have a better handle on it. We do have some sustainability because we were talking about cutting core in half and still not having enough. So this is a very different circumstance, which is why we brought this back. And we're in the happy place right now of thinking not only can we address CORE's requests, which I think is built throughout the 5-year plan, but there's a little bit of room to maybe mitigate some of the what we're about to talk to you about on the next item.
Right.
So it's a good thing.
The point that, since I wasn't here when Tara came in, I apologize if the redundancy, but the thing that's remarkable is that CORE has been able to pivot away from REMP as much as possible and seek other sources of income, and they have been successful and popular enough with the philanthropic community, the fee-for-service market and all that, that they've done a remarkable job, and I just want to make sure they're recognized for that. Thanks.
That's also uncertain. Philanthropy is uncertain.
It certainly is, yeah. Yet they've done okay to date.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Appreciate you both, all of you, all three
You're
of
not
you.
going away, are you?
Just not right here.
No, okay.
So the full name of the class was Uncertainty,
All right.
Probability, and Statistics.
We haven't caught up, but we'll keep plugging. And we're going
This
to
is-
talk
this is
about
hard-
our
this is important stuff.
electrification.
This will all be
It
easy.
is. It is all important. Electrification update. Welcome, Jody and Ryan.
Good news,
Thank you.
please.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Yep. Peter, yes.
Thank you.
Well, this is mostly going to be the Jody and Peter show. But I do want to just say a couple of things high level before we get started, and maybe to just frame this a little bit. To start off, I wasn't here at the time, but you all had provided direction to electrify both the library and the HHS building. So it was a pretty unique project, maybe one of the first of its kind in the state for a building of that complexity and that size with that kind of HVAC that we're looking to convert. We do have a few grants, so we were fortunate enough to get directionally about $3 million from the state on this. There was a one-time funding pot, so we have followed up with the state that there is no extra money available, but that money is still secure. The good news is that we have some flexibility with that money as well. And that could include things like potentially putting it all into one building if we decide that we just don't have the funds to do both at this time, or being able to have flexibility in our approach, I guess I would say, sort of in the scope of the work. So that's good news in all of this. And then I think the other piece of good news is, John kind of mentioned it, is, we're learning along the way. So there were a lot of unknowns when we started down this road. We've gotten all the way through procurement to get numbers back that were quite a bit higher, about double of what we had initially anticipated, directionally in the $10 million range to electrify both the HHS and the library. So quite a bit more money. As John had also alluded to, we were looking at heat pumps and with a backup of those gas boilers that exist there today, but that structurally ended up being a challenge on some of these buildings. So if you're going to roof mount, all of a sudden you kick in new building codes that require screening, and extra structural elements that jack up the price. So what we've been doing, and why we want to present to you today, is to have a conversation, get some direction to take back to our team, and then ultimately come back to you with more refined numbers and such. But I will say, Jody and Peter, as well as the rest of the team, did a great job getting us to this point. We're just going to need to pivot a little bit in order to get these across the finish line. So with that, Jody, if you want to dive into the actual technical stuff and let them know what's going on.
Thank you, Jody Grady. I'm the asset project manager. And just to take a quick, just a tiny bit of a step back, is that the board approved, so if you recall, in 2023, we did a facility electrification study. And that study actually recommended that we replace that we electrify the buildings with electric boilers. That was the scope, and that's kind of where we started that budgeting process. However, in 2024, we came back to the board and talked to you about, if you remember, Peter did a nice presentation to talk about the hybrid system, what those benefits would do, how it creates some redundancy, how it protects us if there was a power outage, and generators and those kinds of things, and also what the subsequent savings would have been over the life of an electric boiler versus a savings if we go with this hybrid. So at that time, the board approved that. We took that opportunity and we added some budget to that revised scope. I think it was about $800,000. And the DOLA grant, the $3 million, is included in the 5.5 millions that you all approved. So we're 5.5 million all in. That includes that $3 million budget. So kind of wanted just to point that out. So following the direction from the board, our team got a CMGC on board with the design team. We've gone from 60% drawings to 90 plus now, and that's where we are today, where we came up with that. FCI was engaged. They have priced out everything to implement both buildings. Again, structural, roof designs, code compliance. We've met multiple times with the city electric because of the transformers that have to be changed. And every system that we do, creates a different impact on the transformer. We really tried to make sure that we kept within the transformers that we could afford and that would fit in the space. We also looked at generators. We've pulled that out, and we're going to do a plug and play. So we've really looked at everything that we can on both, and all of the impacts. That came up to $10.2 million as of last month, or as a few weeks ago. That's the estimate that we're coming up to implement, meaning we're $5 million over budget. Where the project stands right now is that, like Ryan mentioned, that we are working on so the project is on a full stop right now, just waiting to hear what needs to happen next. The team, Bowman, FCI, myself, Peter Rumsey, who will speak here in a few minutes, are working on some alternatives and options for the board that include everything from do nothing to do everything, and some things in between. We unfortunately, he's going to present some of that today, just so you can start thinking about that and ask some questions or get clarification. But we do not have pricing for those options. So staff will come back to the board in a few weeks when we have the full pricing with the options, so that we can get direction from the board on which direction should we take based on the funding we have, whether you all, maybe REMP comes up with a little extra money, or there's other funds that will help, or do we have a path that is affordable that we can take care of? And again, it could be just one building, it could do, we'll see. And I think that's basically my presentation. I can have Peter give a presentation, or we can answer some questions.
We'll start here first,
Okay.
and then we'll turn it over. Greg?
Yeah, just, can we break the funding gap down between the two buildings, just to get a sense? Is it one building 3, the other one 2, or how does that shake out? Is one becoming the obvious, easier one to pull off than the other, or how can we have any information on that at the beginning, so I won't be thinking that the whole time I'm listening?
Yeah. I unfortunately don't recall that breakdown of those two costs. Peter, do you have those?
Yeah, roughly speaking, the two buildings, the upgrade cost of both buildings is about the same.
Yeah.
On the HHS building, we're digging a little bit deeper as far as replacing equipment, but at the end of the day, they come in about the same.
Can I just expand that to ask bang for the buck regarding carbon mitigation, and then I'll yield the gavel, the mic.
Peter, are you going to speak to carbon?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to speak
Yeah.
to that.
So I don't have the numbers to present, but generally speaking, you're getting a little bit more bang for your buck at the library because its energy use is higher than the HHS building. So yeah, if you were saying like dollars per carbon saved, the library is a little bit of a better bet.
That would be a great metric. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll add that into our next presentation. And in addition to, the HHS building has a lot older equipment and is less energy efficient currently than the library, except for the boilers.
Okay.
Well,
Thank
and
you.
that is something, can we get to an amount where there's like a minimum investment required? Like we know, if you're gonna have to do this much, even if you do no electrification.
Yes.
On the HHS building or something.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, back to you. Unless nope, sorry, Jeffrey, go ahead.
Three questions, and they don't have to be answered today since you're coming back.
Okay.
I just figured you guys didn't want to hear me eat chips. So 3 questions. Sense of urgency, what's not working today? Do we have cold library goers? Do we have cold people at HHS? So what's really closest to end of life and that needs the most immediate attention from a capital standpoint? Second question is, given you've gone through the mental gymnastics of putting heavy things on roofs, why can't we put heavy things on the ground? So I don't understand, why you'd engage. Bowman's awesome. So sorry, you have a great mechanical engineer. Please use them. They're fantastic. If you're in the room shaking your head, cool. It seems mental gymnastics of roof structure and screening seem really kind of a waste of money when we live in a place with precious amounts of copious ground space. And the third one is, again, just an observation, goes back to the earlier conversation, which is you're describing the same pain points that we're putting residential users through, right? You're sitting here saying, we need to upgrade the transformer. And then we have a building department that says, oh, you don't need to. It's 200 amp, you're good. So I just think that, again, I don't need animals, but this sounds a lot like we're eating our own dog food here. Sorry to leave you with that gross final comment.
No idea what you're
That's a little obscure.
No idea.
The reference was we're going through the same pain that clients that are looking to electrify their own homes. If you're in the city of Aspen, you're on a 60 by 100 lot, and the city's saying, throw it on the roof. We don't want to see it or hear it. And it's like, well, we have this perfectly good ground plane. No structural, no roof, just an easier way of doing business. So it seems to me we're making things more difficult, and maybe it's the city of Aspen. HHS should be county. Can't we just put this on the ground?
So I'll take a stab at the first 2 questions, and I think the answer isn't extremely clear cut. I think both buildings need attention. We are putting some attention toward both, And, you know, part of the conversation that we're having in the background, since it was a hybrid system, is as you go through the value engineering process that we're essentially going through, is can you keep some of that older equipment in play? You know, we call it end of life, but if you're not using it very much because you're depending more on these better, you know, more efficient electric options, you know, could you limp it along for, you know, another 5 years, 10 years, whatever?
Like a gas boiler.
Because you're just not using it much, right? So that's we can dig into that answer more for you, but that's high level. And then, as I understand, ground versus roof, because I asked the same question, like, why can't we just put it on the ground? My understanding at the library is a no, it's too tight of a space. Our property lines are right there, so there's just not a good place to put it on the ground, as I understand it. At HHS, we are actually exploring that possibility, because there is a little bit more area. You run into potentially bothering a different set of people because you're moving it onto one side of the building versus the other, right? But something that you can potentially get by and reduce costs because you're not doing structural elements. So, and then your third one was more of a statement than a question, I think. But yeah, we'll
The third one goes back to the earlier
Understood.
presentation today.
Yeah.
And the use of REMP and the creation of REMP. And again, and just to add to that, because we've also been through the same thing with a new boiler at the airport that we're modernizing. So it just seems like Pitkin keeps putting gas solutions in front of electrification, yet we're telling all of our clients, we have a new building code, we have a tighter envelope, you've got to be all electric, otherwise we're going to charge you.
And I think partly the difference, as I see a distinction, is we're going through this retrofit versus new build. And I think it's a little easier for us probably to hold ourselves to that standard with a new build, which we anticipate with the airport, say. But then these retrofits where you already have existing equipment and such, it's just, the conversation becomes a little different, I guess, but noted.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, I'll close it out. I mean, we do 125 permits a year in the county, and 100 of which are basically remodels and 25 are new construction. Those 100 remodels are all part of our new building code and all part of electrification. So I'm just trying to hold us to the same standard we hold our neighbors to.
Fair enough.
And if I could, just to answer that question, I started off by exploring opportunities to put our equipment, to even sharing space down in the parking garage. And so I explored opportunities with the city and some of their location and vicinity to us, and there's just no space. So, but I definitely have looked at that too.
That was my question,
Yeah.
Jody. Thank you for
Yeah.
anticipating that. I thought the city has a stake in REMP and put money into REMP as well, and they have the same focus on electrification that we do. I was just hoping that there was a little piece of land that they would allow us to put them, per Jeffrey's smart suggestion. But if you've already looked into that, then I don't want to beat a dead horse. I'm glad you did. Thank you.
Yeah. So with that, I think if it's okay with you, and we have a few minutes for Peter to just talk to you. So this is Peter Rumsey. He's from Decarbonization Strategies. He is our expert in the room, and I know you guys have enjoyed his expertise in the past, so I'll turn it over to him.
Let me unmute myself. Great, thanks, Jody. I thought that I could just show you a couple of the concepts of where we are and where we can go to lower the cost, so we can at least begin this discussion. Obviously, you can't really make a decision until you get the pricing, which you'll have next time we get together. As a refresher, remember that the cost of providing heat from gas, it's pretty good, and this is per million units of heat. If we're doing that with gas, it'd be about $17 for the same amount of heat. If we use electric boiler or electric resistance boiler, That same amount of heat is more than double, around $40, a little bit above. If we use a heat pump, we can actually bring the cost down and get it to, from what would be $16 or $17 down to, $14. So, roughly 20% reduction, and that's based on current prices of electricity and gas. So in the Pitkin County area. So the other thing to keep in mind is the gas boiler. If we stay with gas boilers as the workhorse of providing heating, we are locking ourselves into at least a couple decades worth of CO2 emissions that are just there. If we go with electric resistance boiler or heat pumps, our CO2 emissions go down close to zero. If we do the hybrid solution, if we do it right, we can get a 80 or 90% reduction. But the reason why we're doing that is or considering the hybrid solution is that heat pumps, this is a cost of a new system. If we go with heat pumps only, they're much more expensive than gas boilers, electric resistance boilers. The hybrid system is much cheaper because we buy fewer heat pumps, and then we have the gas boilers as the backup and for the coldest days of the year. So we're buying less heat pumps because we don't have to buy for the worst condition, negative 20 degrees, negative 30 degrees, and we also don't have to buy extras in case we don't have to buy redundant capacity in case one of the heat pumps dies. We have gas to do that. So that's the concept of why we're going after the hybrid system, is that it's a little bit more expensive up front, but it's going to result in much lower energy bills as opposed to the electric resistance boiler. So if we look at where we are currently with the library and the different options, we have 3 boilers in the hybrid system that we've been pursuing and pricing as 2 new boilers, 9 heat pump modules that gets you a 90% electrification. So, it's a pretty good system. It does a lot of carbon reduction, but now it's come in being significantly over budget. So what are the lower cost alternatives? Obviously doing nothing, but the problem with doing nothing is that you lose the grant money that's there to help pay for electrification. You could replace the boilers. The existing boilers are about 15 years old, so they're not at the end of their life, but they're getting towards the end of their life. At some point you would need to replace them, if nothing else, with gas boilers. If you do gas boilers alone, there's no carbon savings. You could, as a low-cost alternative, do all electric resistance boilers. You'll have higher electricity bills. We could do the analysis on that and say, okay, here's what it looks like. With electric resistance boilers, you would need to go in with a significant upgrade of the transformer for the library, and you need to buy a second transformer because Aspen Utilities does not stock transformers that large, and they want one as backup. So it's an added cost, although it's not gargantuan. But we're going to price that out. And then there's the modified hybrid solution where we could either reuse existing boilers. We only really need 2. And then instead of 9 heat pump modules, we go with 5 heat pump modules. And that would get us 80% electrification, plus or minus, but it avoids any structural upgrade and no electrical service upgrade needed. So you'll save a bunch on the structural and the electrical, and we're buying fewer heat pumps. So it's possible that one will, we'll see a noticeable reduction in the price if we go with that hybrid. But again, we're going to price all of these and come back with what's the upfront cost and what's the operating cost. And similarly, with the HHS, the current system is just 1 boiler, and obviously that's bad news because it doesn't have any redundancy. So we've been going after, and also you should know that the air handler that blows air around the building and the cooling system are oldish, but they're not at the end of their lives. So the idea that we've been designing to, that's over budget, includes replacing the air handler, includes a new cooling system. So there's not electrification things per se, there are improvements to the building. So the lower cost alternatives are similar. We could do nothing, we could put in a new gas boiler, which you could put in 2 units, it would give us that redundancy. We could modify the hybrid system to just avoid the upgrading the air handler and the cooling. We could do the electric resistance boilers, and then there's a modified hybrid, which would be smaller heat pumps, and we might go from 80% electrification down to 70% electrification, and then skip the air handler and cooling. So I know I'm going a little fast, but it doesn't make sense to get too much into it until we have the pricing for you guys. But if you would like, Jody has a copy with a lot more detailed information where we provide, graphics and explanation of some of these. And if any of you want to talk about that or have questions, I can share some of those slides. So, yeah.
Okay,
I think
Francie?
Greg was first.
Question would be for John or someone. This is a long shot, but if we came up and we knew we decided what we wanted to do and we had a funding gap, is there any way we can appeal to the community and find out how the community values align with what we're trying to do, and possibly find philanthropic donations to help electrify the public library? That doesn't seem far-fetched to me. It might be something worth looking at, but could we even do that?
So probably 2 different questions. Could we do it? Probably. Could we do it on a timeline that would match the boiler replacements and such? I think that would be difficult. I think it's always difficult, Greg, for a government to go out and fundraise for these types of projects. I certainly haven't been part of that type of effort for kind of an infrastructure. I mean, this started off not as a remodel, not as a redo of the building. This started off as a boiler replacement project that the board rightly from the Diaz is like, hey, we don't think that's consistent with our values. We want to pursue electrification, and we have. We're learning some tough lessons on it, but I think it is a tough one to fundraise around because you have to answer those kind of policy questions.
I am thinking of the Carnegie libraries, which were a philanthropic effort across the entire country 130 years ago.
Yeah.
Or whatever that was.
The rub is we're not fundraising for a library, right? We're fundraising for carbon mitigation. I think it is different, and that's why there's challenges, right? Our revenues and expenditures were originally set up around maintaining a library and mechanical systems that we knew at the time, right? And this isn't, we're not really fundraising for more books or resources. We've done that, and we remodeled the library, and we did use philanthropic dollars when we redid the library. But I think this is a different ask, and I just want to be really clear about that.
And what's the time constraint? You need the money tomorrow?
Well, the boilers are well past end of life. That's the time constraint.
Well, and so I will just note that because the project was put on hold, we had pre-procured the boilers and some of the other equipment based on the funding we had. We have since canceled that order. We're not able to install the new boilers this year. So I will just say that the boilers will not be replaced in this because we can't make it before winter. So we're going to limp along another year. They have just recently been serviced. So, but as you know, I've been coming here since I think 2017 with those boilers. So it's been a while. And right now they're running very inefficient because of what they are. So we've had problems with them.
I got a vague idea that we're in a hurry, but we don't know exactly when.
Yeah, this project will not be implemented until the spring of 2026 now.
Thank you.
I think I would just add to that as time goes on, if you look at over the last few years, we're seeing cost increases.
Yeah.
And so, you plan for what the price is locked in at, and then by the time you get that money through philanthropic means, the price has gone up. So it does make sense to have whatever path we choose to get that priced out and to get so we understand what we're looking at and to see if we can even move forward. And then that contractor, of course, is at that point ready to go and only willing to hold those bids for a certain amount of time. So.
Yeah, and some of those lead times they're still 12, 18 months. So as soon as the project is approved, whatever direction we go, we will enter that contract to get that equipment ordered. Otherwise, we won't be doing it in 2016 either, or 2026, sorry.
So that deadline is when? Today?
It's coming, a few weeks.
We've got to get direction from you all, ultimately on these choices, and we're getting some of those costs. So in a few weeks, you'll get those costs.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Francie and then Jeffrey.
I have a question, I think it's for Peter. So if we did a hybrid with, say, 2 heat pumps or the 5, however, what about space for those? If we're having issues with space going with the all heat pumps, are we going to have issues if we have 5 or 2?
Yeah. Conceptually, what we're trying to do is avoid the electrical service upgrade and the structural upgrade. There's lots of room on the roof of the library. It's not a problem to put them up there if we can avoid the structural upgrade, right? And I think that with the 5, we'll be there. 4 or 5 will be there. And with the HHS, we're talking about putting the heat pump on the ground. And we've always been talking about some version of that. The question is where. And I did want to just add one other thought, which is these 2 projects are going to be one of the first retrofits of government buildings in the state for electrification, and we're figuring out what a lot of other people are going to need to figure out. And I wish we had the answer right away, but what we're doing is that where's that sweet spot to make these retrofits affordable. And I think what we're going to do is we'll figure out how to do this right, and a lot of other people will gain from that experience, other government entities.
And one other question, if I may. So if we went all electric, we have to reconfigure the entire ducting system and everything. Is that correct?
Not correct. No, we can reuse the ducting, the piping. In the HHS building, we have to replace some of the perimeter radiators, but not all of them. But generally speaking, the concept is to keep most everything. The current design for HHS does have a new air handler, but we can do this heating change without replacing the air handler, and same with the cooling system.
Yeah.
In the library, there's very little, if any, changes to the building systems other than the heating system.
With heat pumps as well?
Some
Either
pumps
electric boilers or heat pumps in both of those situations?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I misunderstood
or
that.
electric boilers or gas boilers. We're just plugging and playing a different
Okay.
source of.
Okay.
It is
Thank
a
you very much.
significant change in our electrical and how we're bringing it out to our panels outside the building. So that was a big part of it.
But if we went with a hybrid, could we incorporate then that capacity of heat pumps to do heating and cooling without 2 different systems?
So in the library, there's already a cooling system which is fully functional. We could get a combination system. They do exist, and in fact, the equipment that we're looking at, you can specify the same equipment, but with heating and cooling. It's more expensive, and we would be replacing a piece of equipment in the library that's,
It's functional,
working
okay.
well.
Yeah, thank you.
In the HHS, that's what we did have in mind is a combination system. It just gets more expensive and complicated. So if we want to cut the budget down, we would refocus on just providing new heating.
Okay, thanks.
Jeffrey.
So when you come back, it'd be nice If we could provide lights on. It would be nice if we could provide operational costs. We can really just say, this one's 4 over 10 years, this one's 10 over 10 years, and I think it's just a cleaner. So installed unit cost plus O&M. If we could tie it to climate goals, that would be awesome, because we just asked someone else at the table to do that. And then for Peter, is there a cheap and cheerful backup on like electric resistance rather than gas? So I'm not trying to add another solution to your matrix, but for clients, for example, that use Space Pack or Train that are using cold source heat pumps, we generally do resistance baseboard because we're worried about those extremes. And so rather than over-engineer for -20 or -30, you just go ahead and you slap in some cheap and cheerful baseboard. Or sexy run tall, your choice.
Yeah. Well, I like the rentals personally, but the issue with that, of course, we did consider that, is that the electric resistance heating does draw a lot of power and therefore would trigger a electrical upgrade. In the case of library, a significant electrical upgrade that adds a lot of cost. So the equipment itself is cheap, but the electrical infrastructure is expensive because it's, you know, it's 3 times more than electric resistance or 3 times more than the heat pump solution, and 20 or 50 times more than just the electricity for a boiler and its pumps and fans.
Thank you.
Well, I'm looking forward to the numbers.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm wondering, just total off-the-wall questions. Have we asked for a discount on electricity pricing for these buildings, potentially, to bring down that potential cost over time? And is there a way to pay for this overtime?
Can I tag on to Kelly's question? So I think one of the concerns in the city of Aspen is both the cost of the vault and the cost of the transformer. So it's again, it would be nice to see how much, given both the city and the county's push for electrification, those are significant upfront costs, and they do require obviously site work, excavation, et cetera. So.
Yeah, and I can tell you
But it's tagging on to Kelly. Sorry.
The transformers are anyway from $48,000 for the smaller ones to $58,000 for the big one, and the big one we have to buy 2. But I think, we'll address some of those questions because it's just unknown.
And that's a pass-through cost for that utility, so I don't know what their incentive would be, or if they have a program that would defray that cost. And I'm not sure if they're an enterprise, but then that might get into that kind of issue. They are. So.
And it's tough with electricity. We have to pay the peak hours just like everybody else. And so when you have a human services building and a library that runs the majority of the day and up to 24 hours a day, it's just the premium that we have to pay during those peak times.
We won't know if we don't ask.
You're not done. You're not
I'm
done.
done. I just said we won't know if we don't ask. Francie.
Are we granted out on this? Have we done all the grants that we could possibly do on this?
Yes.
It seems like there should be some out there since it's so innovative at a state level for government, but not going to happen. Okay, I don't need more.
We
Thank
asked.
you. Yep, thanks.
And we will follow up. I mean, we can certainly ask Aspen, just giving you our off-the-cuff thoughts on
I
it
can
as well.
ask them too.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if we can come back to my other question, but if it's possible to pay for it over time. Help with the complication of the upfront budget gap. Okay, so I think do you want us to narrow down what you're looking at, or are we waiting to hear the cost estimates on the 4 options?
We are in the process of getting the pricing for all of them.
Okay.
So I think we'll just come back to you so you have a full matrix of all the information that will help you guys give us a direction.
I mean, I have to say, coming into this, you know, getting to 80% or 90% is like far less offensive than I was like expecting for this conversation to go. You know, I really was like, oh God, are we gonna like make any progress on this?
Yeah, I agree.
So, you know, so I think you're coming back with workable options.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, I was excited by the 80 or 90% models.
Yeah. Okay, other questions,
And
last
that'll
requests
include the
for
carbon,
future
the carbon
input?
budget.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. These are tough, these are difficult questions, and thanks for doing the hard work on this, all of you. Peter, thank you for coming, being creative in your solutions.
Peter and Jody get the credit for
And
that.
Jody,
one.
right,
A
I
lot
know.
of good work.
Brain
for them.
damage.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I'll just say, I recall this as one of Francie's first meetings of like,
Absolutely.
wait a minute, I got elected to do this thing and you want
Yeah,
me to do
well, I
what?
remember saying to Jody, well, what kind of boilers are you going to buy for the library?
And look where it's
here
brought
we are.
us.
Yes, I know.
Open the hornet's nest.
All right. Thank you, folks. We need to get out of here around 4:45 to let P&Z set up. So let's move through our next two items, which are future agendas and open discussion.
Yeah, I'll try and be quick. So just a reminder, tomorrow, for those of you who are going on the Three Meadows, you're not driving up there yourselves. The idea is to meet at the Eagle County facility at 9:30 tomorrow morning. That's a community center near Crown Mountain Park. And there will be a carpool from there. And so all the codes and such, you'll be with someone who knows them.
And we don't,
That's
we
very
don't need
helpful.
directions.
Yeah.
Great.
And then the only other future agenda item on October 7th, we did get far enough. We were kind of holding that additional Vision 2050 time. If we didn't conclude the discussions we needed to in the retreat yesterday, and I think staff feels like they have the direction that they need.
Awesome.
And so we can, we'll be taking that off the agenda, and I'm sure we'll be filling that space with something else.
Great, thanks.
Still doing disc though, right?
Yes.
The 29th.
And we're getting together with Greg on the 24th, I believe.
Still on my calendar.
Yeah.
All right. Have we made any progress on inviting Senator Catlin?
Not yet that I'm aware of.
Other future agenda items. Have you firmed up travel schedules for people?
Not yet. We're still working on that
Okay.
too, but it is looking like terminal visits are going to push out into December, January, and still waiting to see what happens on the 30th for our DC trip.
Got it.
Okay.
Please thank Amy and Charlotte for the excellent logistics and ZGF. It was
Will do.
flawless for the whole team, so truly,
I told her about the hotel,
Okay.
how nice it was.
thank you.
Other future agendas? Hearing none, is there board open discussion? John, do you have any?
My electronic memory just failed, so I'm trying to get back in.
I have a very light one. I was wondering if we could procure like a case of Pete McBride books and give them out as thank you gifts to people who step down from our boards. Like I'm thinking of like Valerie Braun and like Bill Yoakams and, you know, like some nice thank you. I feel like we do a terrible job thanking them when they're done, and it would be nice to do a much better
It's a really nice thought, Kelly.
That's something we could sign it and give it to the, you know, send it off to them or hand it
I
off
love
to
the
them.
idea of a gift. I love Pete McBride. He's a good friend. I'd love to contemplate the options.
Sure.
You know, maybe
Could be multiple
framed,
options.
a framed
Yeah.
photograph, or something that's lower profile and longer lasting. Maybe, I don't know. But just that's what popped into my head because I've been thinking this along the same lines.
I think it would just be nice if it didn't require effort every time. If there was like something we had a stack of and it was like, great, we want to have a thank you go out to this person, you know, it could be done quickly and nicely.
I'm really so glad you brought that up. I think that's so nice. Thank you.
Fat Belly Burger certificates.
So were you thinking a signed picture of the board, Greg, or were you?
You know,
No thanks.
in our
We can,
in leisure attire.
I think a Pete McBride book is good. He has a few, and some are better than others, I would say. So
You
we
know,
could
or an
find
Andrigger's print or something, you know.
Now you're
But
talking.
if the
Yeah.
board is willing to just give some discretion for staff to do something that reflects local, I mean, what I'm hearing is something that reflects Picken County, published nice, whether it be picture or book, there may be a combination of things that, you know, we put in a cabinet and give out somewhere if
Can you
that's,
bring it back to us?
we can.
I mean, no, I'm not willing to totally give it over to you. Let me put it
Okay.
that way. Even though it wasn't even my idea.
You know, if I could share, I had, when contemplating all the people who contributed in such a short time to the decision and the hard work in getting Three Meadows done, I had proposed to AVLT and Open Space that we do something to recognize people in a small way, a modest way that would remind them of the contribution of Three Meadows being a pretty big deal. And it came down to a framed, either a photograph or an aerial view or painting or block print, something of the place with a statement of appreciation on, you know, describing how many people it took to get it done and what a remarkable outcome. And I love the idea of having things like that we could present when something really fantastic has happened, whether it's something with the airport or the bus, you know. So it would have to change, but the basic composition of it could be fairly standardized. Whether, you know, a framed picture, certificate with a photo, something as simple as that can be down to under $10 or $12 per copy. That might, you know, I still have a certificate on my wall from when I served on the ACES board 20 years ago, and it's like it's still there. It's not in the way. I look at it
Are
every
you
now
talking
and
about a
then.
photograph with some words also about their service?
Yeah, it would be like a certificate plus a picture or a painting or a print, something that's affordable and easily reproducible, but also signable, so that's where I was going.
I like
I
that.
love the idea of a book, but you know, that gets expensive. If you know, the really nice Peter McBride books are quite expensive now. So anyway, just
They
a
always
thought.
have been.
Well, maybe they always have been. Yeah, they're not cheap. So.
I like your idea.
Great. I like the idea too. Thanks for bringing it up.
So what's our direction? I'm open to whatever. We don't do a very good job at this, and I'd like us to do a better
Thank you.
job. And I think the easier it is for everyone, for us to ask staff to help with, the more effective we're going to be. So Greg, if you have a
I have a
template of
template.
something you want
I do,
to
and
like
I'm
bring
gonna
into
send
us
that
to
to you.
see, and
Yep, I'll
you
send
know,
that in. I'm gonna
like
send it to John and
some idea of some
Amy
frame,
first.
type of frame it would go in.
Michael Kinsley painting.
You know.
Goes way back.
Those are expensive. But maybe a print, something along those lines. So we can come back to it if people want to brainstorm a little bit.
Great, thank you. I appreciate.
Okay, is there other open discussion?
Well, can I share something briefly that's been on my mind?
Yes.
Riding my bike into town yesterday, I happened to notice some dark fur on the side of the road passing the airport, and I You thought, well, that happens, it's roadkill. But then I thought, that's not the color of an elk or a deer. And I went back to check it out last night, and it was a full-size male black bear. Had been, obviously, you could see the tracks, hit by a car, doing pretty extensive damage to the car. Then the animal crawled off to the side of the road, 100 yards or so, and, expired in a ditch, depression almost out of sight. But I just saw one ear sticking up. You could probably go look at him now. A massive bear, beautiful big animal, died on the side of the road there. It's in a place that's been a traditional crossing where this has happened again and again. It'll continue to happen. I weep when I see that, and I do think whoever suffered the damage to their vehicle and possibly their person, I don't know about. I forgot to ask Alex about that this morning. But that really is important to me, to try to make some sort of progress on affecting that. So it brings me back around to the questions regarding safe passages and those legal questions. Can we use open space funds to do wildlife crossing? Can we even work on the CDOT property and the CDOT right-of-way? There were several legal questions there. And I know Rye's out of town. I just wanted to follow up and say that's pretty important, I think, to me, and the indication is that it is to the community as well. So I just want to keep that on the, if it's not on the front burner, then on a medium burner, because I know there's philanthropic money out there also waiting to see a commitment from us to try to solve a problem. So I'll leave it at that. But honestly, I was surprised how shook I was, because I went and decided I need to go really look at this animal. And I've got pictures I can share at some point if anybody wants to see them. But I'll thank you for listening.
Thanks, Greg. I do wonder if there is an opportunity to understand better how we get priorities on the Intermountain TPR and how something like this might fit into that long-term scope. And I don't know how it works. So whether it's a relevant question for that group and their priority setting or not might be something to explore.
I don't know anything about that group, honestly. Patty? does that?
Transportation Planning Region.
Yeah, is that Patty? Does she
Yeah,
go to
I think
those?
Brian typically goes those. So
Brian
I don't
Pettit
know
does,
how
yeah.
much- Yeah. Anyway, it just could be, even if it's not something that happens overnight, we could perhaps make long-term progress through that. Other open discussion? Yes, Jeff.
I want to say thanks to this board for the MACE Awards. It was my first MACE Award today.
Oh, great.
And got up, sort of choked up at the beginning, because the first award I realized part of what we're doing is recognizing the community what's being taken away elsewhere. And so it's really nice to recognize folks that have stood up over the past year relative to adjustments at both the state and the federal level. So it was really nice to see the community come together and appreciate sort of the work that everyone's doing.
And each other.
And each other.
Yeah.
So it was I'm sorry we only do that once a year, but thank you to the chair for giving everyone the
powerful.
time, and for even the unprepared follow-on speeches were really welcome. So I appreciate the time.
They're all heartfelt.
And the second one is, I hope we didn't give Connie an ulcer. I know she's sitting to make sure that we did not.
I'm worried that she said next table.
Right?
Ew, does Connie have any open discussion?
But I guess I'll reflect a little bit on Greg's request, and Greg, I will shoot you a detailed note. Thank you for recognizing the TPR. The bad news is that the TLRC, which is the Transportation Committee at the state level, did not advance the bill that this board had supported in 2024-25, which is the Vulnerable Road User Protection Bill. And so we're not going to get any state level support. But Greg, I'll properly respond to you on that.
Thank you.
And feel free to share the note that I just sent you.
Okay. I will note in reference to a prior open discussion item I brought back, the newspaper covered a story on the access to COVID vaccines today, which seems to state that we still do have access to COVID vaccines in our local pharmacies, but the assurance of that into the future is unknown. And you may have to claim yourself a high-risk person. Anything else on that, John? Because otherwise you guys can.
Based on a request that you had made. And so from public health's perspective, they are still hoping to know more about availability. So I think we're seeing it kind of trickle. It's probably not a good word to use with vaccine but our understanding of it is that it's still very up in the air. In fact, the September 17th and 18th, so tomorrow and Thursday, and I'm trying to see what this acronym stands for, ACIP. Sorry, I don't know what that stands for, but believe it is a federal agency. They are going to be meeting to clarify, and there will be a vote around COVID vaccines. So
Okay.
we'll know more.
Okay. Thank
Sorry,
you.
that was not very clear.
And then did you and Jeffrey and I reschedule a future agenda meeting?
I know Amy has that on her radar screen, but I have not seen if we have a new time. But we're not doing it tomorrow because you're both on Three Meadows, right?
But we are.
Yeah, unavailable. Okay.
Just saying.
Yes, Jeffrey.
So I'm going to do Three Meadows Wednesday, Northwest Cog Thursday, and CCI Friday. CCI, there's nothing that we have to deliberate on for this Friday, but we certainly, I know Levi's not here. I think he's on holiday. We will have to have both a delegate as well as our delegate and positions. I think in time for, believe it or not, October 3rd, which would be setting ourselves up in terms of positioning for the 25-26 legislative session.
And we need to bring that back to this board to understand what to support.
Yeah. So I will be at the meeting Friday, but it's not a voting meeting. It's still posturing and positioning.
You jotted down?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm here. I gave Amy that my time's available in the morning.
It's
Posturing.
it's presenting the bills and jockeying for CCI positions. So, for example, there's a we versus an I versus we, and there's is it a me bill or is it a we bill? I think is sort of the way of their terms for posturing. So people are politicking and lobbying and advocating.
Indirect and direct pronouns together.
Posturing.
Okay.
There's chest pumping and stuff.
Yeah, that's what
I'm exhausted. There it is.
Is everyone good?
Mm-hmm.
I think if we are done,
declare
we
victory.
can adjourn this meeting today.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you all.
Grassroots.
I thought we were meeting.